Majesty. Melania and I are deeply grateful to you and Queen Camilla for your extraordinary graciousness. And to William and Kate, thank you so much. It's been so great being with you today. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's a singular privilege to be the first American president welcomed here. The phrase special relationship, seen from American eyes, the word special does not begin to do it justice. We're joined by history and fate, by love and language. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be with you.
Security remains the cornerstone of this special relationship. We have the deepest, most advanced defense relationship in the world.
As I said last night, the bond between our countries is like no other anywhere in the world. The United States and the United Kingdom have done more good on this planet than any two nations in human history.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good afternoon. This is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. There's loads happening right around the world and indeed here in the UK. We'll talk in a moment about digital IDs, but certainly in the Middle East, things may be moving towards a deal. That's what Trump says at the UN in New York. Many people walking out because Netanyahu stands up to speak. We've got the former head of Mossad live in the studio talking about his new book and giving reaction to the suggestion that Tony Blair could be the new governor of Gaza. Yes, really, that is where we are. Loads of people want to talk about digital IDs. We'll get as many of you on the air as possible between now and 7 o'clock. Also, nursery hackers threatening to publish children's profiles online. They've put about 10 online already. They're going to put workers and parents as well. It is absolutely horrendous. We'll talk about Israel, as I said. We'll also talk about the illegal migrant who claimed to be a child facing being deported after officials saw his real age on Instagram. Would digital IDs actually make any difference to that, or do they just need to do a bit of Googling? Also, a gang of teen girls terrorising the high street by smashing windows, stealing and telling shop staff police won't help you. I've seen the video. It's absolutely horrendous. We'll be talking as well about the sport, about what's in the sun, and indeed about Starmer saying that Labour got it wrong on migration. Well, what is the solution? Digital IDs, is that really where we should be going with all of this? Loads to discuss between now and 7 o'clock. I want to get your voice on the air. The number is 0344 499 1000. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a voice note, less than a minute, please, if you would. You can send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring, all on the main number, 0344 499 1000. Plenty to discuss. Let's get your thoughts across to the nation here on Talk. Well, the messages already coming in. Steve says, why do a digital ID when around 42 million people in the UK hold a driving licence? It only needs to be made mandatory to carry them all the time, and for those who don't hold one, to be given a card ID. Alison in Kent says, yesterday at around 5 o'clock, I signed the Do Not Introduce Digital ID petition. It was around 129,000. It almost says 1,100,000 now, and still going strong. Says it all, says Alison in Kent. Well, thank you for that, Alison. Much appreciated. We'll talk about that in a second, but I just want to tell you what Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, has been saying at the United Nations. It's the General Assembly this week. That means all the nations of the world, all UN nations anyway, are there. Plenty of people walked out of his speech. We'll talk more about that a little bit later on, but this is what Benjamin Netanyahu said about murdering Jewish people.
This week, the leaders of France, Britain, Australia, Canada, and other countries unconditionally recognized a Palestinian state. They did so after the horrors committed by Hamas on October 7th. Horrors praised on that day by nearly 90% of the Palestinian population. They danced on the rooftops. They threw candies. That's both in Gaza and in Judea, Samaria, the West Bank, as you call it. You know what message the leaders who recognize the Palestinian state this week sent to the Palestinians? It's a very clear message. Murdering Jews pays off.
That's Benjamin Netanyahu at the United Nations. We'll be talking about that a little bit later on with the former head of the Israeli spy agency Mossad. He's got a new book out. He joins me live in the studio. But first, I want to talk about what Keir Starmer said in a speech today on digital IDs. This is what he said earlier on today.
This government will make a new free-of-charge digital ID mandatory for the right to work by the end of this Parliament. Let me spell that out. You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have digital ID. It's as simple as that.
Well, Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, has responded.
All that digital ID will be is a means of controlling the population, of telling us what we can and can't do, of fining the innocent. And didn't we see it all when we had the pandemic, when you had to have vaccine ID to travel, to do various things? Did that stop the COVID pandemic spreading? Did it help? All it did was put cost and inconvenience on everybody else. I also worry about massive data banks being held by the government, being hacked by foreign governments, by private companies, by criminals. I do not see a single benefit to the government having digital ID other than them controlling what we do, what we spend and where we go. And we in Reform are wholly opposed to it in every single way.
Nigel Farage there, the leader of Reform UK. Well, let's speak to the Labour MP, Emily Darlington. She's the Labour MP for Milton Keynes Central. Emily, thank you for joining me this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
I wonder, Emily, what you would say to the 1,084,151 people who 2 minutes ago had signed a petition, a parliamentary petition, to say that they don't want digital ID.
I would say engage with the consultation, because I'm not sure it is what you think it is. The reality is we engage now through digital devices, and we need to make that secure. And that's what the government's trying to do, is make it secure. Make sure that people that are working in this country illegally, we actually have something to prove. Right now, it's a national insurance number. I mean, I have my very, very old white plastic card. I mean, I don't even think they do those anymore. But the reality is it doesn't really prove who I am. We need to make sure that everybody's working, that what's happening in workplaces, people are getting minimum wage, people are registered, they're paying taxes. We know that the grey economy is a huge problem at the moment.
But what often happens, Emily, as you know well, is that criminals just innovate. We innovate and they innovate. And how is this different simply from giving your national insurance number when all those details will be available already? Because
a digital ID is much more secure. Just like you're using digital ID to access your bank account often now, you're doing two-factor authentication, but the digital ID is about identifying who you are. And in fact, we don't have a piece of ID that fully does that on a universal basis at the moment. You can pay for a driver's license. If you have a car, you can invest in one. You can pay for a passport, but actually a free digital ID for every citizen in this country is really important. It'll help banks stop fraud. It will help us access our public services in a much more cohesive way around us, the citizen.
Who is not accessing public services because they don't have a digital ID? Where is that happening at the moment?
No, we're accessing it in a much more cohesive way. Is the point I'm making. So, for example, if you get cancer, the NHS knows you've got cancer, but then you're having to explain to HMRC and DWP that you have cancer. You're the person, while trying to deal with a cancer diagnosis, that's running back and forth because actually these departments don't know you're the same person, because you have a different tax code than you do your pensions number, than you do your NHS number. And actually to be able for the services to come around you rather than you running from service to service with your information trying to prove
is what people
to each of the services what another service says about you.
Okay, Emily, that may well help people who have cancer. What I think people are worried about is all the different parts of government knowing everything about them. Your doctor, for example, knowing what you're eating. The various aspects of HMRC knowing exactly what you're earning. I mean, they should know, of course, and you've got to declare.
Well, HMRC should know what you're earning.
Yeah, but they don't necessarily. but should they have access to your bank account? Because they can then
They won't. Why would they have access to your bank account?
Well, in DWP they do. No, Emily, factually, in DWP they have access to some people's bank accounts if they have benefits. They know how much is in your bank account and they know what you're spending the money on. That is already happening, and the worry is that what Keir Starmer is saying, first of all, he's saying that you will not be able to work in the UK without a digital ID. There are something like 2 million people who don't have access to the internet at home. There are some people who are perfectly fine in lots of other ways, but they don't want to participate in the digital economy. You're forcing them to do that now, aren't you?
So forcing them to engage with having proper government ID to prove who they are to work, yes, because we want people working here legally. But just to pick up on a couple of your points, it's not like you're going to have an app on your phone that has all of your information and everybody's going to know each other. What it is, what a digital ID is the chance to prove who you are and for the services to come around you. The NHS is not all of a sudden going to get access to the HMRC database. That's not how it works. But you as a citizen could have access to both. And this is why the consultation is really important.
The potential is there, Emily, isn't it? And the worry is that this will be a slippery slope, that we're told at the start, this is something that is there to help you, everybody will get it. I mean, you're essentially saying to people who don't have smartphones, for example, or don't have access to the internet in their homes, and you're talking about 2 million people here, you've got to join the digital age. If you don't, you won't be able to work.
So in every time we have moving to digital driver's license, there is, of course, a paper version that will still continue. When we had
Keir Starmer said in that clip, Emily,
well, we had the vaccine passport, there was a paper version as well.
Well, I mean, is it paper or is it digital? Because Keir Starmer said, in that clip, he said, if you do not have this digital ID, you will not be able to work. So if there's a paper version as well, why do it digitally? Why not just go for the paper edition that everybody has?
Because the key thing is a digital ID. So whether that's written down on a piece of paper or it's electronically in your telephone, it's the same thing. It's a digital ID.
Okay. Are you not worried about the... I mean, I'm not being a conspiracy theorist here. I'm not saying the government wants to control us. I'm not saying that the government wants to know every single issue about us. I'm not saying that we necessarily would move to a social credit system like China. But are you not worried about the potential of this? The fact that there will be more and more control in our lives as a result of this?
Actually, I'm more worried about foreign actors trying to hack it, and that's why I've been really clear from the start that this needs to be UK technology. We shouldn't be asking any other countries, as good as they are, whether it's India who's got this or Estonia who's got this, to buy in their packages. What we need to do is be developing that so we have sovereign capability around this, and that's the best way to keep ourselves secure to those countries that continue to commit cybercrime against the UK.
But the MOD, which is meant to be one of the most secure parts of government, defence of the realm here, had a huge leak of information in regard to people in Afghanistan. We have ransomware, we're talking about this later in the programme, about a nursery school, for example, where people's details are being put on the internet. The fact is that this can never be wholly secure, and lots of people don't trust the government. A lot of people are worried that this won't be secure. Even if it's UK technology, great, fabulous investment in the UK, all for that. But the fact is that this is not 100% secure, is it? And you can't guarantee that, and nor can your party leader.
But this is why, when we increased the spending to 2.5% in defence, there was such a big emphasis on cybersecurity, because we know countries and their actors are... You can't guarantee that somebody's not stealing your identity right now, which they are on a very regular basis.
So why would you then put more information?
So we have to try and make a more secure system, and this would be more secure than the system we currently have.
You can't guarantee that.
That it would be more secure.
You can't guarantee that it is, you and no one, I'm not putting this on you, Emily, no MP, no member of government, no cybersecurity expert can say this is 100%. This is 100% safe. And we're in a situation where the MOD already, in recent weeks, has been a victim of a big data leak here. And there are many, many times, for example, the nursery data leak and ransomware today, that we could have foreign governments holding us to ransom, information in the public domain that we don't have, and you and your government are asking us to voluntarily give that and have that in one place. That is what's happening. That's why people are worried about this.
So this is what digital ID is more secure than the current systems we have. And you're right, we need to upgrade the security on all of our data systems, whether in the private sector or in the public sector. Absolutely, they are. But actually, digital ID is a much more secure way. And the amount of fraud that we see happening is growing each and every year. To be able to prove who you are digitally will actually lower the amount of fraud that you are subject to. You're going to get less emails from foreign princes asking you to access their bank accounts, because actually it's only through a digital ID that you can actually access any of these things, and they won't be able to call you up and ask for your information and use that to access your bank accounts because they won't have the digital ID. So it becomes a much more secure way than this current systems that we have.
Well, we'll see. Just before you go, Emily, Starmer said that Labour got it wrong on migration and should have listened more on that. Do you think he's listening now? Because there are many people who feel that one in, one out isn't going to work, and that these many, many laws and initiatives that have been announced in the last 6 to 8 weeks are not going to solve the problem. We have had 3 people going to France. 4 people going to France. We've taken 3 in, but at the same time we've had over 1,000 coming over in small boats, even since that policy was implemented.
So what's really clear from the history of small boats is that when we lost those agreements with the rest of Europe, this is when the small boat crisis really, really began. We have to have those conversations with our European partners. We have to rebuild those relationships, because actually we need to get boats down to the levels that they were
hundreds of millions of pounds a year. We're giving France hundreds of millions of pounds a year, and they're doing very little to stop those over 1,000 people in the last week coming across the English Channel, Emily.
Well, we walked away, the previous government walked away from agreements that kept small boat crossings down to negligible. And now that they've gone up, we have to rebuild those relationships with those countries, because that is the way to actually get them down.
Emily, thanks for your time. Really appreciate it. Emily Darlington there, Labour MP from Milton Keynes Central. Thank you to Neil, who says this could be the end of Starmer, Peter. It's utterly ludicrous. It is both desperate and pointless by any measure, so must be nefarious. All the best, says Neil in Salisbury. Nan in Wales says, so your guest, Emily Darlington, has just given you every reason for digital ID except controlling illegal immigration. Sean in Bridlington, it's much more secure to have all your sensitive personal information in one place held by a far-left government. Is this Labour MP serious, says Sean. And Lisa says, regarding digital ID, we might as well just hand over everyone's information to our enemies right now. Here you go, Russia. Well, we're going to talk about another nation, Israel. The former head of its spy agency, Mossad, Yossi Cohen, is going to be live in the studio next. Loads happening in regard to that, including Donald Trump talking about the fact that he thinks a deal is close. Could the hostages come back? Also, we have the situation where when Netanyahu was standing up at the UN today, many people walking out. What does Yossi make of that? And could, as some speculate, he be a successor to Benjamin Netanyahu as Prime Minister of Israel? We'll talk to Yossi Cohen in just a second. You're not going to want to miss this. Stay with us here on Talk.
These digital IDs are illiberal, authoritarian, un-British, Orwellian and wrong. Which is why I have commissioned a pair of Talk's finest scissors to cut up this disgusting, wretched, evil, creepy, totalitarian document, because my message is very clear when it comes to digital ID. No, no, no.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, today has been a very dramatic day for the Middle East. We have Donald Trump, for example, saying he thinks a deal may be close on getting the hostages back, perhaps ending the war in Gaza. We have Benjamin Netanyahu at the General Assembly of the United Nations in New York. Now, what happened when he stood up to speak was that people started walking out, various diplomats from right across the nation, I think right across the world. I think we can look at that now when Benjamin Netanyahu came to the stage there, and many nations, of course, hostile to Israel, disagreeing with what Netanyahu's plan for the war is. You can see them there walking out on the screen. If you're watching, if you're listening, I'll just describe. It's literally just people turning their backs on Benjamin Netanyahu and walking out, I would say. I can see a couple of dozen certainly on the screen there in that quite large room. Now, Netanyahu, of course, himself was talking about what he sees for Hamas as how the world has rewarded them. This is what he said to the United Nations General Assembly in New York earlier.
This week, the leaders of France, Britain, Australia, Canada, and other countries unconditionally recognized a Palestinian state. They did so after the horrors committed by Hamas on October 7th. Horrors praised on that day by nearly 90% of the Palestinian population. They danced on the rooftops. They threw candies. That's both in Gaza and in Judea, Samaria, the West Bank, as you call it. You know what message the leaders who recognize a Palestinian state this week sent to the Palestinians? It's a very clear message. Murdering Jews pays off.
Well, I'm delighted that Yossi Cohen, who's the former director of Mossad, which is Israel's national intelligence agency, he ran it for 5 years, also a former national security advisor to Israel, is with me in the studio now. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yossi has a new book out. It's called The Sword of Freedom. It's out now and it's a memoir. It tells some of the stories, of course not all of the stories, of his time in Mossad. I wonder, just before we get into the book, if you could give me your reaction to what Prime Minister Netanyahu said there, Yossi, the fact that there were people walking out of the UN. Israel is very isolated at the moment internationally.
Right, absolutely right. And I think that Israel faces, a very, very tough time internationally. Unfortunately so, because I was expecting them in the world to recognize a little bit better, what we do and what we are actually fighting for. First, we're fighting for our democracies, and we're trying to be the kind of a villa in the jungle, as someone described them in the state of Israel, in what's happening around us. And we've done that for the last almost 80 years already. Unfortunately, on October 7th, we'd been, as the Prime Minister described it, the level of atrocities the Hamas has conducted inside the country. We didn't go to see them in their houses. They came to take us either hostage or killing, butchering, Israelis. On the quantities and the atrocities, or the level of atrocities, are inexplicable and unacceptable in the normal world. Unfortunately, I see that, yes, it is a kind of a reward, to the terror if countries like modern countries and somehow democracies, in the western part of the world, are claiming a unilateral Palestinian state because of what we do in Gaza. This is the major claim, and I feel very sorry, I mean, for those countries who have done that and have declared that. And more than that, I think that the UN General Assembly meant to be a kind of nations, I mean, place to convene and to have a kind of an open conversation between us all. Even if you do not agree with all these that are sitting down there, I mean, this place, okay, that has to be eventually respected by all, is for other leaders to come and place their orders, place their policies and place their thoughts.
But what they often feel is that Israel is not respecting the Palestinians. We have the Deputy Prime Minister of this country, for example, saying that Israel's actions in Gaza are inhumane and indefensible. What would you say to him?
I don't think that a Deputy Prime Minister has visited, I mean, Israel or the Palestinian authorities, I mean, to discuss it in depth with us. And if he did, I mean, I'm not sure how come did he get to that conclusion. I mean, Israel is not conducting but a very intensive war against terrorism and against terrorism only. We're not attacking Palestinians because they're Palestinians. There are innocent
Palestinians dying.
Yeah, innocent Palestinians are dying because they are part of either officially or not officially with the Hamas, and unfortunately, part of them are dying because Hamas is keeping them hostage inside their own houses, hospital, clinics, school, kindergartens, UN facilities inside Gaza Strip, so they have no way to escape. So when you have a missile being shot on the state of Israel, or rockets being shot on the state of Israel from Gaza, from within a kind of a normal house, you don't really have an option but attacking that house. When before that, prior to the attack, normally we're alerting the people of sitting in this house, I mean, to leave. And unfortunately, this is kind of wars that we're sitting, I think, that we're facing today. Not intentionally, of course, but civilians are unfortunately getting killed. They are getting killed because Hamas has conquered Gaza Strip, not because of the state of Israel.
Do you see an end to this? Do you see what Donald Trump is saying here, that an end could be in sight? And if an end is in sight, and if those hostages and the bodies of hostages are returned, if there is some level of peace, if Hamas stands down, could you see Tony Blair being the governor of Gaza?
Yeah, I think it is a wonderful initiative, very surprising, and I would bless Mr. Blair for doing it, and I think that Gaza Strip really needs a kind of a new horizon, or maybe a different fortune.
Is he the right man?
He is.
Okay. Why do you say that?
Because I know him, and I respect Mr. Blair, I mean, dramatically. I mean, I know what he's capable of. I mean, he was a prime minister for about 10 years here in England.
Yeah, that's right.
In the UK.
Would the Palestinians accept that, do you think? Do you think it's reasonable?
I think that he checked that before. If I know Tony and the way he works, I think that this initiative eventually was discussed prior to his statement that he is willing to take that very risky job. And I mean, the chances for him to be successful are higher than anyone else that I can recognize, I mean, doing that job, and not many will accept that.
Even with his history with Iraq, Afghanistan and so on, you still think he could be a person who could bring a peaceful Gaza forward? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I hope so, and I will try, if needed, I will try to help him as much as I can, of course.
Let's talk about your own history, because you were actually in London when you were recruited for Mossad. Tell us about that.
Approached by the Mossad when I was studying in London, Hendon College, by the way. I mean, that was in the early 80s, and I was just resigned from the army. I was a soldier and commander in the First Lebanon War. A day after my resignation from the army, I mean, me and my wife, Aya, I mean, we came here to London, I mean, to improve my English and to try to study, I mean, better languages or the better whatever cultures that never studied before. And Mossad eventually realized that I am around, and I was approached by them offering me a job. The minute they did, of course, I said I would try, and I would love to try to see if I fit to be a future spy.
What is it like being a spy? What is it like being in Mossad?
It's a great feeling. I mean, it's a very risky job. I mean, so you have to be kind of I think, humbly saying, you have to be kind of a brave guy that is willing to take a lot of risk, I mean, to protect your country and the people of Israel or the people of the world, because sometimes most of the operations we do are not only for the sake of the state of Israel. I mean, they serve other countries do, like the UK, France, these that we've been cooperating dramatically with. It's interesting to be, because you are somehow alone, somehow you work in very important teams, and you are away from home all the time. Mossad operates only abroad. So all countries that we are being deployed in for any type of operations is abroad for us. You don't have communication with the house, you don't see your family, you don't live your, all birthdays and, parties with your friends and kids and family. You're missing a lot of the normal people's life. And what you do eventually is serving the country on a day-to-day basis.
Tell us about some of the really audacious things that Mossad did and that you prepared for. I know you weren't there for the execution of it, but you were involved in the preparation, a long time preparation, as you outline in the book, for the pagers attack on Hezbollah, for example. That was just a jaw-dropping moment when that happened.
Well, I think that we've understood, some years ago, it was like 20 years ago that we understood that in order to penetrate behind the enemy lines, as we normally do, and Israelis, and proper Israelis, are wearing the cover stories that they're traveling now behind the enemy lines, to operate, to get information that we need, the intelligence that we need, to get locations of the threats that we maybe one day will attack, and to disrupt what has to be disrupted. And we have discovered that it may be kind of a vulnerability on the enemy's line if we will be part of their supply chain. And we've started to study that like some 20 and some years ago to try and sell them the stuff that they're looking for. So for Hezbollah to buy electronic elements and stuff abroad is hard. Things are not being produced in Lebanon, of course, and not everything is being supplied by Iran. So if we discover that, and if we find the elements to be suitable to what we need, either intelligence, location, or disruptive elements, so we have bugged in and we have manipulated their equipment so to get to the pager explosives.
Yes, when they went off and when such a huge, it was quite funny actually when you had, curious when you had these people, supporters of Hezbollah around the world, apologists for them, saying that this was an indiscriminate attack. It actually wasn't. It was about the most targeted possible attack that you could have, because it was people with those pagers, but it was an audacious attack. You're also involved in stealing Iran's nuclear archive. Tell us about that and how important that was.
That's very important. It became to be even more important recently. Since the June 2025, when we have attacked all Iranian nuclear facilities and long-range missiles, of course, backed by the USA, and then the B-2s of the USA came to support or to complete the attack. I think that the Iranian theft of the archive, the Israeli theft of the Iranian archive, meant to learn more about the Iranian deeds. And since the Iran had claimed for so long time that they are not dealing with anything that is a nuclear bomb, we had many reasons to believe that they do, but it has to be proven to the world. The archive surprised us too. When we have brought into Israel with a very, magnificent work of my operatives abroad or inside Iran, we've been surprised ourselves of the level of activity that we haven't discovered since the archive. Like sites, scientists, scientific work that they've done, some of the elements that we're not aware of that. We've suspected some, but we didn't have the proofs to show the world. And that's why when it came, we did many things. One, the Prime Minister, same Prime Minister that I showed today at the UN, just made a press conference, huge one, and said, okay, this is what we found. 5 nuclear warheads. That was the Iranian plan to do. It is not for civil purposes.
Yes,
Number one. Number two, I have ordered my people to copy it bit by bit, to give it, to my counterparts around the world, here, MI6, and CIA and the others in the world, and the IAEA in Vienna, which is like the player of a Supreme Court for nuclear activity. And everybody, all the bodies, and I told them, you will tell me what's in it. And everybody endorsed that and say, these are the actual originals. I insisted that the originals will come with the archive home.
Yes.
And they did.
So for someone who was involved in such audacious, such detailed work that took a lot of patience, you had left Mossad by the time the 7th of October happened. What went wrong there from an intelligence perspective, do you think?
Everything went wrong. Yeah, everything went wrong. I often explain that, to that very, very tough question. Everything went wrong because when you are in my business, the only thing that you have to know is what the enemy is planning for you. And that's why I'm sending so many people around the world, to know and learn what the enemy is planning for us. It could be a terror activity, like, let's say, kind of a clandestine operation conducted by Hamas, Hezbollah, or by the Iranians, or it could be a huge plan, I mean, to destroy the state of Israel, like the nuclear Iranian program. You have to know what they're planning for us. Otherwise, you cannot counter it, or you cannot disrupt it, or you cannot.
So why did Israel drop the ball to such a degree then?
I don't know what has happened. I mean, I'm absolutely maybe not surprised, but shocked. I'm not surprised because I knew that the level of intelligence coming from the Gaza Strip is poor. I've learned that when I was National Security Advisor, and that was the first time that I was eventually learning, dealing with the Gazan people, or the Gaza Strip as a territory. And that territory eventually was not abandoned, but the level of intelligence that we have had was far from being sufficient.
Just finally, Benjamin Netanyahu is a real survivor in politics. He has been someone who a lot of mud has been thrown at him. He has a number of things to answer, of course. He won't be leader of Likud forever. Could you enter politics and perhaps become Prime Minister?
I haven't decided to go into politics, but if I will be invited to do that by the Likud party, I may consider that, but that's not the case right now.
Well, we'll keep an eye on it. For the meantime, we have a great book to read. It's called The Sword of Freedom. I found it absolutely fascinating. It's by Yossi Cohen, the former director of Mossad. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Peter, for having me
I really appreciate you joining me today. Lots of people, I don't have time because we've got to go to a break, but lots of people really interested in what you're saying there and expressing support for Israel as well, as so many of our viewers and listeners do.
Thank you, sir.
In a moment, we're going to talk about digital ID. We're going to talk about Starmer and migration. Stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, your voice notes have been coming in thick and fast on digital ID. This is what Alan has to say.
Hiya, Pete. Alan from Swansea, yeah? Regarding these ID and mandatory, I won't be having one. As simple as that. I didn't have these vaccines. Remember the COVID? I'm not a conspiracy theorist. It's freedom of choice. So I will not be having one. And there's millions like me. They haven't got the infrastructure, the computers to deal with all this data anyway. So I think it's deflection tactics from all the other scandals last 2-3 weeks. So people are talking about this now rather than Mandelson, immigration. It's just a lot of nonsense, really, isn't it? Okay, buddy. Shut up.
Alan, thanks for your thoughts there. Let's hear what Mark has to say.
It's Mark from London. This digital ID, I'm not doing it. Why should I have to? The only way I'm going to be happy is if every single immigrant that comes into this country has it. They're the ones that need it, not me. I'm the one that's been here all my life. I'm the one that's paid my taxes for the last 20 odd years. I honestly don't know what Starmer's doing right now. I don't get it. You should be on damage control because every single person I've spoken to wants you out. Give us an election.
Well, Lisa Nandy was on Question Time in the BBC last night. She thinks it's a good idea. This is what she had to say.
How will these digital ID cards work?
Well, one of the things that we're thinking about is whether to introduce digital ID, and we think there is some merit in this. The Prime Minister will say a bit more about this tomorrow, but we think that they offer two benefits. The first is that they'll be able to make sure that people are able to prove their right to be here, to work here legally very easily, which will then help us to deal with the illegal economy and stop people being undercut at work. But we also think there might be big benefits as well for citizens. If you think about the way that the NHS app has developed in recent years, and now you're much more able to do things like make GP appointments online and access your medical records, we think there may be benefits to the general population as well.
Lisa Nandy there speaking to the BBC on Question Time last night. Well, Thomas Godfrey is with me, news reporter for The Sun. Thomas, I have rarely had a reaction of so many people saying they don't want these digital IDs. We heard Alan saying there, we heard Mark saying he doesn't want them either. And the benefits, I mean, I'm not sure what they are. What are your readers saying at The Sun?
Well, the readers as well are up in arms. I mean, they're also struggling to see the benefits. The big one touted by the government is that this could stop illegal migrants who have come into the country on small boats from working in the black market on jobs like Uber Eats, Deliveroo, Just Eat, all the scandals that we've exposed a lot, and also some of the companies that have been fined up to £45,000 ago for employing illegal staff. But you've had 8 civil liberties groups come out today and warn that mandatory digital ID risks pushing unauthorised migrants even further into the shadows. They'll take up new jobs, they'll find new ways of working around the system.
This is always what happens, isn't it, Thomas? What always happens is that whether it's immigration, whatever it is, we innovate, they innovate, we innovate, they innovate. They're going to find a way around this. Cash in hand is going to be a way that these people get their money. We know as well, I'm sure you've had it as well, you order something, not that I do it all the time, but last night, for example, I ordered an Uber Eats. I got some haddock and chips, which is very nice. And the person who delivered it was the person who was on the app, but sometimes it isn't. And then you complain about it, and they just say, "Oh well, sometimes that happens."
Well, back in June, I got hold of a Just Eat account while posing as a new arrival into the country. So it was me turning up on people's doors, which is probably more terrifying than who it actually was meant to be. I mean, this is sort of Tony Blair's dream, isn't it? I mean, this is what he's been pushing for his entire political career, this idea of national ID, digital ID. And actually today you've had the Tony Blair Institute come out and tell the government to go further, faster. This follows in the vein of other European countries. Estonia has mandatory ID for its citizens to prove that they can work. The difference is people aren't flooding into Estonia illegally on small boats and then undercutting, in many cases, jobs for the working population by working illegally. I mean, how far along a policy, how unpopular does the policy have to be with the general public for Nigel Farage and Jeremy Corbyn to unite against it? Because that today is what Keir Starmer's achieved.
Jeremy Corbyn's against this, as am I, which shows that, you know, even a stop clock tells the right time twice a day. Starmer also saying they got it wrong on migration here, partial apology here, but still, it's still very bad for him. A new poll predicting Nigel Farage will be way out in front, over 300 MPs for Reform UK, if that poll is to be believed.
It's certainly a startling admission, although only a sort of part apology, as you say. I think he knows and Labour know now that the window, the public perception on migration has shifted, and it's because of the startling numbers of asylum seekers coming across the channel, 32,000 this year, higher than any year on record at this point. But it's also because legal migration is so high. In the Telegraph today, Keir Starmer says, quote, "The belief that uncontrolled migration was nothing but good news for an economy should never have been accepted on the left." Well, maybe it's the Office for Budget Responsibility that need to hear that more than other left-wing economists. But he may as well join Reform in using the term Boris wave at this point. And that's a term Boris Johnson derided earlier this week, of course, but that number of immigrants into this country who came here on the student visas, work visas, did skyrocket during his premiership.
And you know about this because you've been looking into an immigrant who claimed to be a child. Now we know his real age because of Instagram. That didn't take digital ID, that took a bit of Googling.
It did take a bit of Googling, you're right. I mean, this is in the paper today. They spotted, so he came in the back of a lorry in February 2023, climbed off in Luton, made his way into central London, presented to the police and said he was born in February 2007. That would have made him 15. Went through into foster care as a child, so that story was accepted originally at face value. And it was when Southwark Council in South London went through their age verification process. Part of that investigation was looking at some of the online footprint he had. That included an Instagram page. The date he had used to sign up to that Instagram account was January 1st, 2000. So a millennium baby, but that would make him 23. A judge in an immigration tribunal found he'd been acting independently and far older than his stated age. That included travelling to Scotland by himself, making it to another country alone on the train. Not something you'd expect the ordinary 15-year-old to be able to do with no influence from their carers. He was also kicked out of his fostered accommodation for repeatedly smoking in his room. So a tribunal in the end ruled he was actually 23 when he arrived and is now 25. But the fact he was able to lie so easily about his age, and of course if they hadn't found his Instagram account, they may well have accepted his story that he was 15. 40% in the last sort of 3.5 years or so, 40% of asylum seekers whose claims as children were challenged by the Home Office were later found to be adults. That includes 1,300 people from Afghanistan.
My goodness. Just before you go, just tell us this thing about Morgan McSweeney. He is the Chief of Staff at 10 Downing Street. This all seems to have gone away for Keir Starmer, the Electoral Commission not reopening its investigation into funds that went to Labour Together.
Yeah, the Electoral Commission have effectively given Labour an out. It was Labour Together, the think tank, had more than £700,000 of donations from wealthy business, and we're not still entirely sure who those donations were from. That's not been declared. This did help bankroll Keir Starmer's run to be Labour leader. So this still looks bad. There's no escaping that the optics here are still bad because it is back in public consciousness. People are talking about it again. And that leaked email earlier this week exposed by the Conservative Party shows that Labour Together had been told by a senior Labour lawyer that it was probably best to explain it was an admin error rather than anything else. I mean, it's still not a great look for them, but that £14,000 fine, the Electoral Commission have decided that's all water under the bridge. So in terms of claiming victories, the Tories probably claim a partial victory, but it's not quite a clean hit because there will be no investigation and no further wrongdoing can be proved.
And Morgan McSweeney is still in place. Thomas, thank you. That's Thomas Godfrey there, news reporter for The Sun. Loads of people getting in touch about Yossi Cohen there, the former leader of Mossad, who we interviewed there a minute ago. Yule in Ballymena says the usual suspects walking out of the UN, no surprise. But now I fear President Trump is going to betray Israel. David says, please can you tell Yossi that many of us British, Welsh, Scottish, Irish support Israel totally. God bless. Barry says, I've just purchased Yossi's book, but I don't know if I want to read it now. He's just described Tony Blair as a great man. Bruce says, please tell Yossi Cohen Starmer recognising a state of Gaza, not in my name. I'm pretty sure not in the majority of people in the UK's name as well. And Penny in Essex says, listening to Netanyahu's speech was very good. Starmer recognising Palestine as a state is a disgrace and rewarding disgusting terrorists who are monsters. Starmer has to go, says Penny. Loads on digital ID as well. Dawn in Chelmsford. Imagine that we all have digital ID. Then the enormous reach of AI could interrogate the system and take us over. The potential downside is frightening. Chris and Barnsley, how is this digital ID going to be free? This will come from the tax fund that we pay into. It will cost millions to organise it, and the millions can go elsewhere and do things we want them to. And another person says, why does the government think it has an implied right of access to use our phones for their use? I pay for my phone, not them. Loads to discuss. Let us know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. We're going to talk to David Spencer in a second about some really disturbing footage. We'll play some of it to you about a gang of teen girls terrorising a high street by smashing windows, stealing and telling shop staff the police won't help you. Stay with us here on Talk.
These digital IDs are illiberal, authoritarian, un-British, Orwellian and wrong. Which is why I have commissioned a pair of Talk's finest scissors to cut up this disgusting, wretched, evil, creepy, totalitarian document, because my message is very clear when it comes to digital ID. No, no, no.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, lots to discuss now on Talk. David Spencer is going to join us in just a second. He's Head of Crime and Justice at Policy Exchange. There's some really disturbing, horrific footage out there about a gang of teenage girls terrorising a high street, smashing windows, stealing from them, telling shop staff the police won't help you. This is Britain in 2025. Let's just have a look at this. I'll narrate it for you if you're listening on the radio.
This is a high street under siege from a group of teenagers causing damage, stealing and making threats.
I will kill you.
God's sake.
I will kill you.
These are teenage girls saying, I will kill you, to shopkeepers. These are young women, girls, wreaking absolute havoc, totally out of control, feral. There's also some horrific footage out there about shoplifters loading bags with bottles of booze at Waitrose, a hapless security guard standing next to them. Britain is just out of control. David Spencer's with me now, Head of Crime and Justice at Policy Exchange, one of the think tanks in London. David, what do you think it says when these people can just act with such impunity at such a young age, saying they know the police are never going to lift them, they're never going to face justice?
Good afternoon, Peter. Well, I think impunity is absolutely the right word. There is a culture of impunity in reality about shoplifting and generally the sorts of crimes that you're talking about here and that you've seen, that your viewers will have seen here. And, you know, it's absolutely right that, you know, it's ironic almost that one of the people in these videos said the police won't help you, you know, they won't do anything. And that unfortunately is proven to be correct. Policy Exchange looked earlier this year about what the cost of these sorts of crimes are to the economy. And what we found was that the cost to business alone of crime in the UK is about 38 billion a year. That's just the cost of crime to businesses. And the reality is we are seeing this time and again. And one of the other concerns I think here is that when people do choose to step in, whether that's members of the public, whether that's shopkeepers themselves, they become really worried that actually if they do step in, then either they'll get beaten up, they'll get assaulted, or they'll get arrested themselves.
Well, we saw just, what was it, a couple of weeks ago, the man who took his trousers down on public transport, and then people asked him very politely to put them back on again, and then less politely to put them back on again as there were people around. They were arrested for assault. He got off scot-free, and there is this real worry, a sense, and also the reality of two-tier justice in our country. How do we get the rule of law back? How do we start putting victims first, David?
Well, I think you're right. There is just a real sense whose side are the authorities on, whose side are the police and the courts on, because time and again, it feels like we're seeing these sorts of cases. In terms of how we get it right, I think certainly one of the things that I would say is that there is a sort of progressivist ideology at the heart of policing the criminal justice system, which has taken hold over the last 30 years. And we really need to correct some of the ideas that are at the heart of that, which have been able to embed themselves in the criminal justice system. So, for example, you mentioned two-tier policing, two-tier sentencing, and the sort of sentencing guidelines that came out earlier this year. We've got to rip this stuff out by the root. We simply cannot have it in the criminal justice system.
But if there aren't enough prison places, David, if we have first Shabana Mahmood, formerly as Justice Secretary, now David Lammy, saying they want to put fewer people in prison, you know and I know that those girls in that video will never see the inside of a prison cell.
Well, that's absolutely correct. I mean, aside from younger offenders, certainly when we look at adults, then we absolutely need to see more of those people in prison, and we need to see more prison places built to do it. The reality is the endless community sentences and rehabilitation programs that the most prolific offenders get. Again, Policy Exchange looked at this only very recently over the summer. The most prolific offenders, and I'm talking about people with over 75 previous criminal convictions, in over half of cases, those people walk scot-free out of court after they get convicted again. They don't see the inside of a prison cell. And so it is absolutely necessary that what we start to see is the criminal justice system taking seriously the law, the needs of the law-abiding majority, and actually locking these people up and sending them to prison.
David, thank you. That's David Spencer, their Head of Crime and Justice at Policy Exchange. What do you think of that? That was a BBC report we saw a little bit earlier on. These teenage girls terrorising a high street, smashing windows, stealing, telling shop staff the police would help you, and just saying really calmly, but in a really sinister way, which actually kind of made it worse, saying, I will kill you. There are just so many horrendous things happening. On digital IDs, loads of people getting in touch as well. Graham and Bushy says, as sure as night follows day, these digital ID cards will be extended to other government services and requirements. You're absolutely right, Graham. That is what's going to happen. Nancy in Wales says, your guest said just now she has the original national insurance card. This was a little bit earlier on, but that doesn't prove who she is, but it does because your national insurance number is your own. Dave says, UK technology. Let's take a second to remember who makes our phones. That is Dave in Dorset. Mirella says they need to worry about the illegal immigrants first and getting them ID'd before you think about chasing down everyone else who pays into the system already. I am fuming, says Mirella, and Leslie says, I've never been so ashamed of this country after Netanyahu's speech and the response from Hamas after our disgraceful Prime Minister recognised Palestine. And Emily Darlington as well, the Labour MP there, she's just let the cat out of the bag, says Trevor and Milton Keynes, the ID isn't just about the ability to work, but she said it'll be used to access other services. The government are a dictatorship and just want control, says Trevor. Whatever you think about crime on our streets, whatever you think about Netanyahu in the Middle East, particularly what you think about digital ID, you let me know. We're going to get your voices on the air between now and 7 o'clock. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Plenty still to come.
Your Majesty, Melania and I are deeply grateful to you and Queen Camilla for your extraordinary graciousness. And to William and Kate, thank you so much. It's been so great being with you today. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's a singular privilege to be the first American president welcomed here. The phrase special relationship, seen from American eyes, the word special does not begin to do it justice. We're joined by history and fate, by love and language. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be with you.
Security remains the cornerstone of this special relationship. We have the deepest, most advanced defense relationship in the world.
As I said last night, the bond between our countries is like no other anywhere in the world. The United States and the United Kingdom have done more good on this planet than any two nations in human history.
We are working together to end the humanity.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good evening. This is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. We've had quite an interesting first hour. We heard from the former head of Mossad. We've heard about digital IDs as well. Loads of people getting in touch about all of that as well. We're going to continue that conversation. Will Geddes, the security expert, is going to join us in a second. The government pumping out more information about it. Darren Jones, the chief secretary to the Prime Minister, has got a video we're going to show you in just a second. But loads of people really, really unhappy about this. We'll take a look at the sport this hour as well. Also, what's happening with Kneecap, the terror case against the Kneecap rapper, thrown out after a mistake by who else? Lord Hermer, Richard Hermer, the most dangerous man in government, the Attorney General, who missed the deadline by 1 day. Funny that, isn't it? Tony Blair also wants to run an interim Gaza. Haven't they suffered enough? Lots to discuss between now and 7 o'clock. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a voice note, less than a minute, please. 0344 499 1000. That's the number for WhatsApp text messages and indeed for phone calls too. Plenty to discuss. Want to get your voice on the air between now and 7 o'clock. And remember, I'm back tomorrow between 10 and 12:30 and indeed between 10 and 1 on Sunday morning. James Cleverly, the Shadow Deputy Prime Minister, and the Housing Secretary Steve Reid are confirmed for that show. Plenty to discuss then and indeed here on Talk. Well, Sasha has been in touch with a voice note on digital ID. This is what Sasha has to say.
It's Sasha from Cheshire. I've just been listening to the discussion you've had with Emily, and the reason why I'm so opposed to this digital ID is because I already have a passport, I already have a driver's licence, and I already have my national insurance number. I do not need to prove any other way that I have the right to work in the UK, and so why should I be forced into a digital ID when I already have several documentation devices that prove I have the right to work in the UK? I don't want to have a digital ID because I don't want to have different groups of people having access to information that historically they don't have access to. So her points are invalid to me because I already have my passport and my right to work. I shouldn't need something else to prove that.
Well, those points are very, very valid, and thank you for them, Sasha. This is what Dan has to say.
Afternoon, Peter. It's Dan from Kent. On digital IDs, does the government think we're really stupid to believe they're going to spend that much money, which will probably double or triple, to stop illegal migrants from working? Do they really think we're stupid?
Thank you, Dan. Let's speak to Derek in Manchester. He's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Derek, what do you think about digital IDs?
Hello, Peter. Yeah, to be quite honest, I'm hoping that this is Starmer's poll tax moment. And I'm hoping that enough people now get so annoyed with this guy that somehow we manage to force a general election. Or you know, I mean...
Well, there are loads of people, really, like you, Derek, really annoyed about this. 1,145,610 signatures the last time we looked at the petition.
There'll be a lot more than that. But the thing is, you see, what's going to happen when all those millions of people turn around and say, keep your digital ID, we're not having it, I'd rather go on the dole? What the hell is going to happen then when half the country decides?
Will they, though, or will they just say, actually, they'll just put up with this? Will people just say, well, everybody else has it? Like,
I certainly won't. I won't be. If I can't work on what I've already got, I was born in the country. I've never been out of the country.
Yeah.
And if I can't work in this country, then they'll have to pay to keep me. It's as simple as that.
Derek, thanks for your thoughts. You feel very strongly about this, as do many, many other people. Christina says it's very kind that they're making digital ID free. Does it come with a free phone? Great show. Mark also says, your guest just said digital ID is free to every citizen in the country. Illegal immigrants are not citizens. Well, that was Emily, the MP we spoke to earlier on, Emily Darlington, the Labour MP for Milton Keynes Central. Sadly, confusingly, not Darlington. Darren Jones, remember him? He's now the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister. Number 10 have posted a video on their account. They say, got questions about the government's new digital ID scheme? Here's Darren Jones, Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, with everything you need to know. Well, is it everything? Let's hear what Darren Jones has to say, and then we'll get the verdict of the security expert, Will Geddes. Here's Darren Jones.
What is a digital ID? My name is Darren Jones. I'm the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister. Let me explain. A digital ID is an ID on your phone that just proves you are who you are. And when you apply for any new job in the UK already, you have to prove that you have the right to work here. With a digital right to work check, you can do it with your phone, as opposed to having to rummage around for a passport or a utility bill which your employer has to photocopy. It's free, it's not going to cost you anything, it makes life easier for you. Lots of other countries use government digital ID. Australia or Denmark or Estonia, other places in Europe, as it means that we can hone in on those dodgy employers employing people illegally much more effectively. So that for the rest of us that get up every morning and go to work legally, we know that we're all doing the right thing and the system works well.
Darren explains there with his funky tunes there to tell you all about digital ID and how it's all going to be marvellous and everything's going to be amazing and brilliant. Let's talk to Will Geddes, the security expert. Are you convinced, Will?
Nope, I'm certainly not. And I think, like everybody else, Peter, the whole thing is just a mess. It's got absolutely no purpose. And I think people are only going to read into this having more insidious applications than simply allowing us to work, which we can do with an NI number. And it's not that much rummaging to get to your passport or to your driving license, Peter, to be fair.
I think it'll probably be perhaps more rummaging getting a digital ID, especially if you're not. I mean, I know where my passport is. I don't know where half the apps are on my phone, and then you got to enter a password and all the rest of it. So, I mean, do you think some of our viewers and listeners think this is a sinister thing? They think this is about control. What do you think, Will?
Well, I mean, a colleague of mine actually mentioned today something which I thought was actually kind of relevant, and that is one of the things that police will always want to do if they are either arresting you, even before they charge you necessarily, is to look in your phone. Now, if you get stopped, Peter, you're going to have to open up your phone to show them your digital ID, and once the phone is open, they can get into your phone, and that's the last bastion. And you've got to bear in mind, not just the police, but we have our entire lives contained on our phones, all our communications for work, personally, all our contacts, our private messaging, all this stuff. And to be honest, digital ID is something which I feel, A, is unnecessary for anybody who is domestically here in the UK anyway. It's more applicable, I would have thought, for immigrants and illegal immigrants, especially coming into the country across the channel.
Well, a load of our viewers and listeners are saying there's loads in that, Will, and I have a number of extra questions. But the main point is a load of our viewers and listeners saying, hold on a second here, why should we have to go to extra inconvenience when it's people coming into this country who they should be going to extra inconvenience, especially if they're here, if they're seeking asylum here anyway. That's what should happen. Also, the metadata, the idea that everything's together, that they can search all these things together. I mean, they're saying already the mask is slipping here slightly, because they're saying, oh, it's only for your right to work. Well, actually, it's about accessing services as well, and they're going to put a lot of that information together. They may well do that to get bits of government to talk to other bits of government, which is always a very difficult thing. I know that from personal experience. But actually, the potential for this, the real worry I have, is that they're suddenly going to put a lot of things together and say, oh, hold on a second, you've had 2 international flights this year, you can't have a third. Or alternatively, you're eating too much red meat, or your carbon footprint is too big, or you're buying too much petrol, or whatever. The possibilities for this are quite big, aren't they, Will?
I think, yeah, Peter, you're absolutely right. The implications of having this digital ID, I mean, let's bear in mind that Keir Starmer has mentioned it to try and tackle illegal immigrancy. It should be fundamentally the final threshold for legitimate entry into the country. And these illegal immigrants should need to go through a process and then be documented by having one of these digital IDs. us day-to-day Brits, why do we need it? It doesn't make any sense. And the other problem as well, Peter, if we go back to the COVID times, those COVID passes that were created, or you could only get if you were actually inoculated and had the vaccine, they were being duplicated, they were being counterfeited, and there's nothing to say that a digital ID couldn't necessarily also be counterfeited, especially as technology has come a long way, even in the last 5 years.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Matt, in terms of the advances in technology and the fact that we don't know exactly quite where this would go. I wonder if you could just tell us about this story about nursery hackers threatening to publish children's profiles online, because every time I hear a story about your data is safe, well, we've all received an email from, you know, name of high street business that says, oh, the information we have on you is not secure, please change your password. And of course you can't remember the password in the first place, and then it's, if you can remember it, it's probably your password for 20 other things anyway, which it shouldn't be, but more often than not it is. And I mean, these nursery parents, the business that runs it, they've just been having an absolute nightmare with this kind of ransomware, haven't they?
Yeah, but this isn't alone. I mean, to be honest, ransomware has increased about 600%, Peter, in only the last year. And ransomware is something that we are all susceptible to. And what it will fundamentally do is lock our systems. It will tell us it's encrypted, we can't access it, or they've accessed sensitive data which they're going to leak, as they did in the instance of this nursery group and this particular group who's releasing pictures to show of the children to show that they actually have ownership of their system. But it comes down to fundamentals in terms of what you need to do to secure your systems. Now, like you said, Peter, we have a number of thresholds already in place, whether it be a PIN to get into our phone, a password to get into our email account. But the one thing that is our main threshold is that PIN to get into our phone. Many of those accounts are already open. Even the banking app might be able to be accessed.
Yeah.
So the more layers that we put in, the better. And the same applies to businesses. We've got to be very cautious.
It's a really, really difficult thing, certainly. What do you think that nursery should do? What advice would you give them, Will, if they came to you and said, look, they've already put out details of these children. They're saying they're going to put out further details of employees. What would you do? Would you pay them? Would you try to negotiate? What would your advice to them be, Will?
Okay, so they've already got the authorities involved, and now the authorities are involved, and they're lucky that they have got them involved.
Yeah.
They can leave it with them to obviously resolve. But I think if any of the listeners or viewers have this kind of situation, firstly, try and avoid it by backing up all your data on a constant process. Because if they encrypt it, just literally press the reset button and reinstall the last backup that you had. Don't pay the ransom. I mean, I deal with blackmails and ransoms on a regular occasion. You can be guaranteed that either they won't just stop or give you the decryption key. But secondly, many of these decryption keys that you pay for, you know, as part of that ransom, they often have a bigger Trojan virus inside them. So, you know, ultimately you can't pay. If you can contact the authorities and the authorities are going to respond, fantastic. But to be honest, paying it is not necessarily going to resolve it.
Yeah. Will, wise words there. Really interesting to talk to you. Thank you. Will get us there, the security expert. And that story about the nursery hackers, just horrendous. Digital ID is a real concern of many people. John sent us a voice note. He's very worried about it, as are many others as well. Let's hear what John has to say.
Good afternoon, Peter. How are you? This is John from Glasgow. Peter, I just wish to ask a question regarding these digital ID. Partly it's to make sure you can work in Britain legally, etc., etc. What is a national insurance card for then? I'm pretty sure that does a job at the moment, does it not? So this is meaningless, absolutely meaningless. It would be good to hear your take on it. Thanks, Peter. Bye.
John, I totally agree with you, and I mean, I spoke to Emily Darlington, the MP, about it. I'm actually going to ask Steve Reid about this, the Housing Secretary. He's out for the government on Sunday, and he's going to be on my show between 10 and 1, so do tune in for that. I'm going to say to him, as I said, Emily Darlington, and I don't think I got a satisfactory answer, what is the difference here? Why are we doing this? What is the point of this? Simply allowing and opening the door for greater government control. I'm not being a conspiracy theorist here. I'm simply saying that if you give the government the potential to put all your information together, well, it may not be this government, it may not be the next government, but at some stage there's going to be some government in this country, there's going to be someone somewhere who's going to say, right, let's put this all together and let's start making assumptions, let's tell people how they can live their lives. And, you know, there are certain aspects like climate change, for example, because there is a consensus and everyone agrees. Well, we don't, and there isn't a consensus. We don't all agree that climate change is one thing or not one thing. I think it's happening. What I don't want to do is to say, okay, well, net zero, we've got a target in 2050, therefore we're going to stop people's carbon emissions to get there, because everyone agrees that we've got to get to net zero. Well, we don't agree to that. Well, it's government policy. Okay, well, who voted for it? Well, it went through Parliament. Okay, that's democracy, but should we then have to change our lives because of that? I just think it could go in, that's just one example. I think it could go into all sorts of different areas. Let's speak to Sean in Hampshire. He's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000 about this. Sean, you're very welcome to the programme. What do you think about digital IDs?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Cardwell. I was just thinking, last year the NHS was hacked. About a couple of years earlier, Marks and Spencer's got hacked. Then they were talking about a bank that got hacked, and now you got the Jaguar company. They got hacked.
Yeah, and this nursery as well. These children's information. Yeah, young children.
And if you got all the information in one little area, what stopped them getting millions of people's national insurance number? They can sell them to all these people coming across. They could also then all the bank accounts and all that. There was people's bank accounts went down at one of the top banks.
Yeah.
But then you got as well. Then you got about 5 years ago, or longer. There was that guy with Asperger's who hacked the FBI.
Yes, Gary. What was his name? Yes, I remember this. I remember this. Yeah.
They tried to come across and other Theresa,
Theresa May. Yeah, I remember.
She stopped them taking them away. Well, if a bloke in his bedroom with Asperger's can hack the FBI.
Well, what about AI as well? Sure. What about Gary McKinnon?
Yeah.
What about AI as well? Artificial intelligence. I mean, there will be hackers who will use AI to do this as well. Sean, I am very worried about this. I just don't think we should be voluntarily putting this all together.
Yeah, but you might be able to tell me. You might be able to tell me because nobody said it. I'm walking down the street. Okay, the police say to me, "I want to see your ID." What if I ain't got one? What's going to happen to me?
Yeah.
Will I get arrested? Will I get put in jail?
I hope not.
I'm 69 years of age.
Well, I know what they do with driving licenses, Sean. If you don't have your driving license, they say, well, you've got to bring it to a police station within, 5 working days or something like that. Maybe that would be the way of it.
That when I was actually driving. No, years ago, it used to be that you never carried your driver's license around or your insurance because if you left it in your luggage and your car was nicked, they can use it and they can nick it and sell it.
Very good.
So that's why nobody ever carried it.
Very good points there, Sean. Listen, thanks for your comments. That's Sean there in Hampshire. I'm going to talk to Nicole Lambert next about all sorts of things, particularly the BBC claiming Bob Villan death to the IDF. It wasn't incitement. Apparently, a blind man on a galloping horse could tell you it was incitement, and the O2 Academy in Leeds apparently still going ahead with their concert there. We'll talk about whether Tony Blair should run Gaza. What do you think about that? Lots to discuss. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Party is a 200-year-old party. It was the most successful election-winning machine in Europe, in Western Europe. Yeah, they are the natural party of government in this country, and they face being decimated, like absolutely decimated in the next election if these polls are anything to go by. Huge wake-up call to their party. I know we're going to talk about the show in a minute, but when I was talking to Robert Jenrick, he had this really stark message that they need to start fighting.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Loads of people getting in touch about digital ID. Penny in Essex says, where are the parents of... Well, actually, that's about something else. Richard says, if you get your mobile phone stolen in London, another person has your identity. Another person, Margaret, says, the chaos from not stopping the boats and the incompetence of governments mean the British people will have to fall in line with ID cards. This will be the tipping point. Starmer will be out by Christmas. Where are our human rights, says Margaret in Birmingham. And actually on those girls who would no doubt be setting their human rights when they are arrested, if they're ever arrested, for causing absolute terror in regard to those shopkeepers. Penny says, where are the parents of these ghastly girls? The parents are obviously not bothered at all seeing filming. They must recognise clothing, voices, etc. It's just dreadful. Arrest them. How difficult is that? The police do not care. I want to talk now about what's happening in New York. Benjamin Netanyahu is the Prime Minister of Israel, of course. He has been talking to the UN General Assembly. Lots happening in the Middle East and about the Middle East today. And as he was talking, we can see on the screen people walking out, various diplomats and senior figures from around the world walking out of the United Nations as Benjamin Netanyahu comes to the stage to give his address there, talking about rewarding hate and what these different nations, including our own, are doing. Many people, I would say at least a couple of dozen there, walking out of the UN General Assembly main chamber there in New York, that is, earlier today. He talked about how recognising a Palestinian state, which we have done here in the UK, is the ultimate reward to intolerable fanatics.
Palestinian Authority is corrupt to the core. They haven't held elections in 20 years. They use the same textbooks as Hamas, exactly the same textbooks. They teach their children to hate Jews and destroy the Jewish state. These are the people you want to give a state to? What you're doing is giving the ultimate reward to intolerant fanatics who perpetrated and supported the October 7th massacre. Giving the Palestinians a state 1 mile from Jerusalem after October 7th is like giving Al-Qaeda a state 1 mile from New York City after September 11th. This is sheer madness. It's insane, and we won't do it.
Well, I don't always agree with what Benjamin Netanyahu says, but I can't think of any single word he said there that I disagree with. I think all of that is perfectly reasonable. We also have Trump today saying that it's looking as if there might be some sort of deal, possibly getting the hostages back, possibly ending the war in Gaza. And the spectre of Tony Blair, never far from the news. He wants to run an interim Gaza government when the war between Israel and Hamas ends. Donald Trump's aides are backing him. Let's talk to Nicole Lambert about what she thinks of all of these developments. Nicole, great to talk to you as always. Where are we with all of this, do you think?
I mean, I hope that we are edging towards some sort of ceasefire deal, and hopefully we will be getting the hostages home. Israel is in Gaza City, and they're not finding much war happening there in terms of battles, because Hamas seems to have run away from Gaza City, which makes them think that there aren't many Hamas soldiers left, even though they've been recruiting teenage boys, that there's just not very many of them left. So maybe this is kind of Hamas's last stand. Hamas, until recently, was saying still that it would only release 10 of the 20 living hostages and half of the 48 hostages altogether. But and Israel and America have both said you've got to release all of them in one go, and that's it. and also that Hamas has got to go. So those are the two kind of sides on the table. And we've got to hope, really, all of us, that perhaps Hamas will see that there's no future for it. And even with this British recognition, French, Canadian, they're all saying that Hamas has to go. So Hamas are being seen as a stumbling block. And then perhaps if we do get to that ceasefire, then we can then talk about what happens next in Gaza, because it's not like suddenly the IDF will leave, because what we might see is some sort of civil war going on in Gaza, and everyone's going to try and avoid that, and people certainly don't want to see Hamas returning. I'm told that no one wants to rebuild Gaza when they know there's a chance of Hamas returning and this happening all over again in a few years.
Of course. David Lammy, the Deputy Prime Minister and Celebrity Mastermind contestant, calling Israel's action in Gaza inhumane and indefensible. He would, wouldn't he? Also, we have Tony Blair, the spectre there from him. Interesting as well, talking about the Labour government, Lord Hermer, the Attorney General. Really weird that someone who is such an accomplished human rights lawyer, someone who really deals with deadlines an awful lot, as many people do, somehow, clearly just a complete coincidence, managed to miss a deadline, which means that Kneecap, the absolute scumbags masquerading as singers here, as far as I'm concerned, in my deeply held personal belief, anti-Semitic, who were waving Hamas and Hezbollah flags. Well, that terror case has been thrown out after a mistake by Lord Hermer.
It's terribly convenient, isn't it, that Lord Hermer somehow didn't sign the document on the right day, meaning that they'd missed the 6-month time limit, which meant it could be thrown out of court without all of the adjoining we've had, or the jamboree outside, the shouting, the screaming. And obviously we know, if you're looking at how we ended up recognising Palestine and how we recognize, how we ended up with David Lammy coming out with all of these libels at the UN, that's because our own country is at war over this. There is a real division, particularly within Labour, and Labour doesn't know how to handle it. So that's why it's particularly convenient for Hermer. But I do wonder if it's going to put the public eye on him, as he's already in quite a fair bit of trouble over his advice to the government, particularly over the Chagos Islands. Well,
it's bad advice. It's been consistently bad advice, and he's survived in his role because he's Keir Starmer's BFF. Talking about dodgy musicians, Bob Villan apparently shouting death, death to the IDF, not incitement according to the BBC. They have said that it shouldn't have happened, but just take us through this. We also contacted the O2 Academy in Leeds to see if their concert in November is going ahead. Answer came there, none. They haven't given us an answer on that.
Well, I have to say, so Bob Villan, they said death to the IDF. They screamed from the river to the sea, and they also talked very openly about their Jewish manager and how bad he was because he was a Zionist. So the BBC has agreed that it was anti-Semitic and that they were wrong to have shown it, but somehow they've still managed to clear themselves. In Amsterdam a few days ago, Bob Villan got in trouble there because they were shown to have apparently rejoiced in the murder of Charlie Kirk. So these are guys that do incite violence, in my point of view.
They also lie about it as well, Nicole, because they said in regard to the IDF that they weren't talking about individual soldiers, and then lo and behold, footage emerges from a few weeks previously where they talk about individual soldiers in the IDF. They're just horrible, horrible people. And this guy Pascal Robinson Foster has still not been interviewed by Avon and Somerset Police. I mean, what is going on here?
That to me is one of the ridiculous things, that the BBC should come to this finding before the police had. But also you have to ask, well, exactly what's going on? Are we going to find ourselves again with this 6-month time limit, that somehow it's too late to look at, when it's what they said on stage is something that we all saw, how difficult it is to put a case together on this.
Well, exactly.
It's either incitement or not, or it's either, whatever they're going to charge them with or not. It's not that difficult. We can all see what happened.
But the best thing we know is that no one in authority would ever let the clock just run down and then miss a deadline by a complete accident, which Lord Hermer did. Of course, I'm sure that was just a complete coincidence, and no aspersions cast on him, on the lifelong pro-Palestinian Lord Hermer there whatsoever. Now, let's just talk about Robert Jenrick, the Conservative. He has been speaking to The Sun on Sunday to to Kate Ferguson with her new podcast. This is what he's been saying about Gaza flags. We'll watch this clip and then get Nicole's reaction.
I think that people are sick of seeing, you know, the Gaza flag being put up, a lamppost, a Pakistan flag. You know, a couple of weeks ago, I went down the road from here in Newark and put up Union flags on lampposts for a couple of hours, and car after car, HGV drivers, van drivers were honking their horns. They were saying, good for you. People want us to feel pride in our country, and in order to do that, you have got to integrate people properly and expect that everyone who comes into our country cherishes our history and our heritage and our culture.
Should there be this ban of putting up kind of the Palestine flag then in public buildings or in the...
Well, look, I don't want foreign flags on public buildings.
Yeah.
I don't want to see them on the streets.
What do you think of that, Nicole?
I think there's kind of nuance in terms of when the war in Ukraine started, a lot of places put Ukrainian flags up, and I don't think anyone was offended. It felt quite different with the Palestinian flags because obviously it represented what Hamas did on October 7th, so it became a terrorist flag. A lot of Jewish people that I know feel very uncomfortable seeing anyone with that on, even though you can also understand that maybe they're just people that feel sorry for what's happening in Gaza. So I think it's nuanced in that way, but also, you know, I love the British flag. I think it's a thing of beauty. Reminds me of royal weddings and all of that kind of stuff. And it's the Jewish holidays at the moment. Is the only time I go to synagogue, and we always do a prayer for the royal family and for our armed forces. And I would say that often on the anti-Palestinian marches, the Jewish people will often fly the Union Jack. But the Union Jack has been flown in Golders Green, which is the most Jewish area. No one knows who's put it up. The council took it down, and it went up again. And for Jews who live in the area, they're a bit like, is that aimed at us or for us? And I think that is part of the intent thing. Like if it's being put in an area full of minorities, it can feel a little bit triggering, even if it's a flag you love, because it is kind of saying you're not welcome here.
I have a weird relationship with the Union flag, having been in Northern Ireland and seen, you know, throughout my life it's been used to demarcate areas, to intimidate people in some ways, and then other people are just really, really proud of where they live and want to fly it. Similarly, the Irish flag, I don't think if you banned the Irish flag you'd have too much success in Northern Ireland as a result of that. I do wonder as well with this digital ID, calling it a Brit card, how far you're going to get in Northern Ireland with that. I know you watched the interview with Yossi Cohen an hour ago, the former leader of Mossad. I just wonder what impressions you had of that. I think you saw him at an event as well in the last few days as well, Nicole. A fascinating person.
Really fascinating. Yeah, I saw him talking last night and a bit more about some of his work with the Mossad. He's one to watch. You know, it's great you've had him on his show because a lot of people in Israel think he could be the next prime minister. He's part of Likud, which is Netanyahu's government. He's been talking a bit about Netanyahu and how he won't go into government with Netanyahu, but could possibly replace him. And obviously we saw, it feels to me, you know, we saw what happened at the UN, that Netanyahu, and I don't believe he should be attacked in this way, but he's kind of being seen as a kind of new Hitler. In that a lot of people who are really angry about what Israel are doing are putting all on
him. Yeah.
Not understanding that if you're invaded and 250 of your citizens are taken hostage, of course you're going to war. And that is, again, the way people are seeing this in a very black and white way.
Yeah, complete lack of nuance, as often is the case. Well, you bring us that nuance very frequently, and we're always grateful for it. Nicole Lambert there, journalist, giving us her thoughts on all these issues. Thank you, Nicole. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. Jay in London says, I just watched Netanyahu while eating my delicious Israeli dates. What a speech. How dare all of those people walk out? Why don't they just fly to Gaza? It is time the UN was disbanded. It serves no purpose but to promote terror instead of standing firmly against it. His speech just now gives me more hope than ever to live peacefully as Jews while all our so-called leaders bow to jihadi terrorists. Shame on them all, says Jay. And another person says, Elisa in Chelmsford says, fascinating interview with Yossi Cohen earlier on. I'm so grateful for people like him whose bravery ensures our safety. I will read his book after I finish Political Animals. She mentioned it, not me, Ofcom. gmail.com. Thank you for that. Lots more to discuss. We'll get some of your calls on the air next. If you want to get your voice on the air between now and 7 o'clock, you know the number to call: 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, here's something interesting. The digital ID policy should go further, according to the Tony Blair Institute, his own think tank. There's hundreds of people. It's by far the biggest think tank in the UK. The Director of Government Innovation Policy, it sounds a bit sinister, says the Prime Minister is right to say in his speech today that we need to show people the state is on their side and make it work for them. Digital ID can and should be the gateway to this. The contribution digital ID can make to combating illegal migration and the criminal groups that exploit desperate people is part of this. But importantly, digital ID can do so much more for our citizens, our communities and our country. Well, let's find out what Anne thinks about this. She's given me a ring from Sussex, 0344 499 1000. Anne, digital IDs, what do you think?
I just think it's crazy, but I also wonder why they haven't gone the full whole hog of what they are planning, which is actually to just put barcodes under our skin so that we don't even
It's all about revelations, isn't it? It's all about Mark of the Beast for me. I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist about this, but it is a bit much, I think.
It's more than a bit much. It's deliberate. We are being manipulated in a huge way, and people moan about Keir Starmer and that he's not doing whatever, but actually he is achieving what he was elected to do, which is to change this nation radically. He was never against getting rid of the boat people, because that's the whole concept behind us taking the rest of the world and getting rid of Christianity and Judaism.
Do you honestly think he wants to do that? Do you honestly think that's his mission?
Yes, I read the 45 Goals of Communism, which shocked me the other day, and then I read about the Lucas Trust, Peter, just look it all up. You'll see how this was planned before the 1940s, before the war, how they would take over the world and get rid of the West. They do not like the West.
Okay.
Fortunately, other countries do, but now what's going on in Israel is appalling. While people are starving in many countries of the world, nobody cares about that.
Yeah, correct, because Israel's always wrong. And thank you very much for your thoughts there. Thanks also to the person who's texted me to say, good afternoon, Peter. I've been in possession of a citizenship card for 2 years now. If I need to show the card, then it is accepted nationally. I'm not having a digital card. Steve in East Yorkshire, if you need a digital ID card to work in the UK, presumably non-working pensioners don't need one. And if I don't want one, will my employer have to sack me? Because if yes, and with over 1 million signing the petition, the unemployment statistics will rocket, as will unemployment benefit payments, says Steve in East Yorkshire. Thank you for that. Another Steve, this time in Sheffield, says the country is already struggling financially, so how is the government going to pay for digital ID? Probably another tax we'll have to pay. Well, we're told it'll be free, but of course nothing's free because we've already paid for it through our taxes. Brad in Cambridge, Starmer is deluded. Employers and landlords are already supposed to ask for national insurance numbers, yet they still employ illegal immigrants in huge numbers. It's no coincidence, Starmer said yesterday, that he admits he got migration wrong. It was just a ploy to introduce digital IDs. And on Netanyahu, Lorraine says UN members walking out when Netanyahu spoke simply shows the immaturity of these spineless individuals. Democracy is about debate, listening, agreeing and disagreeing. These people need to grow up and stop their playground tantrums. Where is their anger over Hamas? This is disgraceful politics, and the UN is redundant and not fit for purpose. Lorraine also says Starmer has betrayed the indigenous British electorate at every level. Shagos, fishing, farming, elderly, illegal immigration, Jews, democracy, employers. Be in no doubt that digital ID will never be in the best interests of us. It will be used as a weapon to control anyone who dares to speak out or have a viewpoint different to the left. Starmer lies when his lips move. He is a traitor. This is treacherous. Steve is in Leeds and has been in touch about the shoplifting children. This really shocking footage. Can we play that again, actually? Just this BBC report about those shoplifting children. Horrible young girls saying, I will kill you. I will kill you, to shop owners, people who are just trying to make an honest living. And of course, these young girls going around smashing things, stealing things. This is what the BBC reported earlier today.
This is a high street under siege from a group of teenagers causing damage, stealing and making threats.
I will kill you.
God's sake.
I will kill you.
Ghastly, and you can see, and if you couldn't see it, you could hear the damage that they are wreaking there, the sinister threat. Steve has some thoughts on this. He's given me a ring from Leeds on 0344 499 1000. Steve, it's just horrendous, isn't it?
It is, Peter, but it's not surprising. So I'm 61, yeah? So when I went to school, when you went to secondary school, they had a thing called the cane, right? So I was one of those kids who got the cane quite a lot because I was quite naughty. But I had lots of mates who were terrified of it and didn't join me in being naughty.
Do you really think corporal punishment is the way forward?
Well, the thing you've got to remember is what you've got is children who are attracted to children, right? So what I mean by that is you get one kid in an area who's a troublemaker. Now, when I was young, I remember at school at 13, a lad in our school got sent to Borstal, right? He was a local troublemaker. He had a little gang around him that knocked on people's doors and threw people through the hedges and made a right nuisance of themselves. And that kid one day wasn't at school, he was at Borstal, right? And all his mates suddenly started to behave. And everybody else understood that if you go too far, there's consequences. Children aren't stupid. If you teach a 10-year-old or a 9-year-old from the age of 9 to the age of 14 that every time they do something wrong, nothing happens. The police don't intervene because they know that they can't get locked up. They can't prosecute.
So, Steve, I'm not a parent, okay, but I have a nephew who's 12. I would never want to hit him. I would never want to discipline him in that way. I have occasionally.
Yeah, but Peter, you're using that language again. I don't want to hit him, right?
But that's what it is. That's what corporal punishment is.
Yeah, but in your mind, that's somebody punching a child, right? So when
or caning them or whatever. I don't want to do that to a child.
So if I can just explain, when my daughter, very quickly, I work a lot. My wife used to take the daughter shopping. When my daughter was 6 years old, every time she got to the till, she threw a tantrum because she wanted the sweets, in the middle of the shop. So I said to my wife, I'll take her next week. And we got to the till, and Daddy, I want sweets. So you're not having them. And she threw a tantrum. So I smacked her, just the once, on the leg, and she started crying. And I said, if you do that again, you'll get another one. After that, she never once threw a tantrum in front of a till. So punishment of a corporal type can be effective. I'm not recommending child abuse.
No, of course you're not. Of course you're not. And listen, I was smacked.
Children,
I was smacked as a child too, Steve. I just don't want to do it myself. They're small people.
That's fine. That's fine. But what you get is the consequence of children knowing there's no consequences to their actions. So, you were on earlier about this guy saying, oh, when they get to 17, 18, they're committing 30 burglaries, 30 this, 30 that. Those children, if you look back at schools, if you look at schools now, the behaviour in schools is horrendous, because children know there are no consequences to their actions. And
isn't there something in the middle? Okay, let's say there's something in the middle of what is happening at the moment versus what you are advocating, which is the return of corporal punishment. Isn't there something in the middle where there are consequences? There are well-run schools. There are schools where children are well-behaved. We know, for example, the Michaela School in London, Catherine Birbelsingh School, is very, very well run. The children are well-behaved because they have very, very strict working and teaching there. But there's no corporal punishment.
No, but I'm not saying corporal punishment, but approved schools, Borstal, for those children that are outside the norm, because everybody thinks everybody's child is the perfect child. No, there must be a reason why they're naughty and why that girl at 14 on that video, because she was 14, right? She needs to be plucked out of that community so she doesn't attract that sort of behaviour for other girls and sent to an approved school for a period of time, a year, 2 years. We don't do that anymore. So all we do is plonk them back in, and you end up with these gangs of feral kids.
Yeah.
That basically don't appreciate the law, don't look at it. As she said, what are the police going to do? And to be honest, we all blame the police. Oh, you should lock them up. The police don't have the authority to lock them up. All they do is
and that's part of the problem as well, Steve. We need to have respect for our police, but how can we, a lot of the time, when they don't often respect us and arrest people for stupid things? Steve, really interesting thoughts. Thank you very, very much indeed. Some breaking news now, and two Labour MPs who were suspended because of the two-child benefit cap have been reinstated. They're back in the Labour Parliamentary Party. John McDonnell, former Shadow Chancellor, Afsana Begum as well, have had the Labour whip reinstated, and there are a few others, of course, who are back after having been suspended: Richard Burgundy and Byrne, Imran Hussein and Rebecca Long-Bailey. Zara Sultana not back. She's now left the Labour Party, of course, to set up your party, my party, whose party? I can't believe it's not the party, whatever it's called, with Jeremy Corbyn. But John McDonnell and Afsana Begum. So I think they're all back now from what we can work out here. This is all of the ones who were suspended apart from Zara Sultana. So John McDonnell, Afsana Begum back in now. So that is the development this afternoon, that John McDonnell, Afsana Begum back in the Labour Parliamentary Party as well. Right then, we are going to have a break now, and then we'll talk about the sport. Stay with us.
decimated, like absolutely decimated in the next election if these polls are anything to go by. Huge wake-up call to their party. I know we're going to talk about the show in a minute, but when I was talking to Robert Jenrick, he had this really stark message that they need to start fighting.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks everybody who has been in touch. Michael says, good afternoon. I am a former soldier who carried ID for many years and indeed have a veteran's ID card even now. I also have a passport, a driver's licence and 2 forms of driver's CPC cards. All are photo IDs. And Reg says digital ID won't be free to every person in the country because we will be paying through the nose with our tax. Also, if we haven't got it on us once it's been issued, we'll be getting fines, I'm sure, says Reg. Well, thank you for that. We'll continue that discussion. But now I want to talk about the sport.
Sports news from The Sun.
Well, Jake Sanders is with us. He is the sports news editor at The Sun Sport. Hello, sir.
How you doing?
Very well, thanks. Start with the Ryder Cup. What's happening? Can Europe sustain it?
Very good start, as you say. 3-1 in the first session. The 4-ball session, the second session of the day, is currently going on now. But it's been a really bright start. Europe looking for their first or any away win from either side since the miracle at Medina in 2012. And the big guns, Rory McIlroy, Tommy Fleetwood, John Rahm, Tyrrell Hatton. Fleetwood Mac again.
I like that, yeah.
That was the big story in 2023 in Rome when they both performed really well, and they've gone out hot this morning.
They were everywhere, essentially.
Yeah. So hopefully more of the same in this afternoon session, and then heading into the weekend, and Europe can, pull off a historic away victory in New York.
Great stuff, and we will see the second session getting underway, just in the last half an hour
or so?
Started
it just before 5:30, so yeah, hopefully more of the same and blue points on the leaderboard.
Let's talk about football. Cole Palmer currently resting after a groin problem. How big of a miss will this be for Chelsea? Who can fill the creative gap now with Palmer unavailable?
So yeah, it's quite a difficult one for Chelsea. They've not made the best start to the season in the Premier League, lost at Man United last weekend, lost against Bayern Munich in the Champions League, and Palmer's got this ongoing groin issue that Enzo Maresca is clearly slightly concerned about, and he says he's resting him. They're obviously clearly trying to protect him with a long schedule ahead, which means he's going to be out of tomorrow's game against Brighton. Jose Mourinho's return to Stamford Bridge on next week, and then game against champions Liverpool next weekend. So not sure. Buonanotte, who they bought in from Brighton, is unavailable to play against his parent club, so it'll be interesting to see who fills that void over what has been a really frustrating sort of few weeks for Palmer, who obviously came off early last weekend against Manchester United.
We spoke yesterday to one of your colleagues in regard to Mike Anstead, about a big exclusive that was coming. We know now, of course, that was Martin Lipton's big exclusive, that the US tech guru Brooklyn Eric plotting a world record £4.5 billion bid to buy Tottenham. What do you think of this? Will this be a good move for Spurs? That would be 5 of the Premier League's big 6 owned by Americans.
So yeah, obviously we exclusively revealed that a world record bid. Tottenham have briefed today that they've rejected the initial approach, but Martin believes that next week they're going to make an official bid. So it will be interesting to see, if and when the money comes on the table. 4.5 billion is obviously an obscene amount of money. And yeah, potentially a really exciting time for Tottenham. They've been under Daniel Levy's ownership for 24 years. He obviously stood down recently, so potentially a massive opportunity for Spurs to sort of rub it with the best and potentially win more big trophies after winning the Europa League in May.
Jake, thanks for your analysis there. Jake Sanders, our sports news editor of The Sun Sport. Lots to discuss there, and lots to discuss on digital IDs as well. Darren Jones, who is the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, put out this video, we're going to play it now, about what we shouldn't fear digital IDs. They are something that will help us. This is what Darren Jones has been saying. I'd love your reaction to it. Let's just play what he's put on social media from Number 10.
What is a digital ID? My name is Darren Jones. I'm the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister. Let me explain. A digital ID is an ID on your phone that just proves you are who you are. And when you apply for any new job in the UK already, you have to prove that you have the right to work here. With a digital right to work check, you can do it with your phone, as opposed to having to rummage around for a passport or a utility bill which your employer has to photocopy. It's free, it's not going to cost you anything, it makes life easier for you. Lots of other countries use government digital ID. Australia or Denmark or Estonia, other places in Europe, as it means that we can hone in on those dodgy employers employing people illegally much more effectively, so that for the rest of us that get up every morning and go to work legally, we know that we're all doing the right thing and the system works well.
Darren Jones there, who is sort of Keir Starmer's representative on earth, really, Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister. Esther's been in touch and said, would people be stopped from getting their benefits like universal credit and PIP if they don't have this ID? I think they might be, Esther. They haven't announced that so far, but I'd be very surprised if that doesn't come in. Anthony says, on digital ID, what happens when asked for ID by the police? Currently, we have reason to refuse. Can the police stop anyone at any time and demand it? Dan in Hartlepool says, I can't wait for drug dealers and crime bosses to start demanding their workers' ID. Pretty sure the underworld won't follow the rules anyway. Susan says, are we to believe that the royal family will have digital ID? Do you think Starmer and his MPs will all have one? What's the betting it will be a case of don't do what I do, do as I tell you? Also, when the number of migrants continues to go up, we will be able to see with our own eyes that digital ID will not stop illegal immigration. It has already been proven in Germany, Italy, etc. This man simply cannot stop lying. Clive in Solihull says, so honest law-abiding taxpayers will be forced to have digital ID, yet if you turn up in a rubber dinghy, the government doesn't fingerprint them, take their photo or DNA. This is not about illegal immigration. It's Big Brother and will be a slippery slope to the state controlling us just like China. I am angry. Vote reform, says Clive in Solihull. Dave in South Gloucester says, when trotting out our support for digital ID, I noticed when listing the so many so-called benefits of this, Lisa Nandy kept saying may, not will, giving this government's record and truth and fact. This should be taken as more smoke and mirrors. And John Roberts in Germany says, where is the proven track record in digital ID? France and where I live in Germany have ID passes. Both have illegal migrant problems. I looked at the online petition. It's currently 1.2 million signatures. Deflection politics, I think. Well, we're going to check during the news what that petition is at now. I think the last one was 1,165. 1,165,000. We'll check it out. We'll get back to you on that. We're going to talk more about digital ID. We're going to talk to the leader of the Social Democratic Party, William Clouston. Also, no doubt the Sun will be covering this. We'll talk to John Lucas from them as well. But I want your view as well before 7. Give me a ring, 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, it's just gone 6 o'clock. This is Talk Drive. Thank you so much for your company. I'm Peter Cardwell here with you till 7. Kevin O'Sullivan will take over between 7 and 9, and then it's What Just Happened between 9 and 10. I'm back tomorrow morning between 10 and 12:30, and then on Sunday it's a bumper politics programme between 10 and 1. The Shadow Deputy Prime Minister James Cleverly is on the programme, as is the Housing Secretary Steve Reid. So loads to look forward to over the weekend. I hope you can join me for those. In the meantime, digital ID, the big story that everybody wants to talk about. We'll talk to William Clouston in a second about that. He's the leader of the Social Democratic Party. What do you think? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Really lots of many people getting in touch. Worries about their personal privacy, worries about what the government knows and what they can control. There are many aspects to this. We're going to get through all of them in the next hour. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note, less than a minute please. You can send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring, 0344 499 1000. Plenty to talk about between now and 7, and tomorrow between 10 and 12, and on Sunday between 10 and 1. So stay with me, Cardi P, here on Talk. Well, Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, has made a big speech about digital IDs. We knew this was coming. Today he confirmed it. This is what he said.
This government will make a new free-of-charge digital ID mandatory for the right to work by the end of this Parliament. Let me spell that out. You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have digital ID. It's as simple as that.
Lisa Nandy was talking about this, the Culture Secretary on the BBC last night as well. She outlined a bit more detail about how it might work.
How will these digital ID cards work?
Well, one of the things that we're thinking about is whether to introduce digital ID, and we think there is some merit in this. The Prime Minister will say a bit more about this tomorrow, but we think that they offer two benefits. The first is that they'll be able to make sure that people are able to prove their right to be here, to work here legally very easily, which will then help us to deal with the illegal economy and stop people being undercut at work. But we also think there might be big benefits as well for citizens. If you think about the way that the NHS app has developed in recent years, and now you're much more able to do things like make GP appointments online and access your medical records, we think there may be benefits to the general population as well.
There's a lot more to this. There's a lot more to this. Well, Nigel Farage has been talking about it. This is what he has been saying.
All that digital ID will be is a means of controlling the population, of telling us what we can and can't do, of fining the innocent. And didn't we see it all when we had the pandemic, when you had to have vaccine ID to travel, to do various things? Did that stop the COVID pandemic spreading? Did it help? All it did was put cost and inconvenience on everybody else. I also worry about massive data banks being held by the government, being hacked by foreign governments, by private companies, by criminals. I do not see a single benefit to the government having digital ID other than them controlling what we do, what we spend, and where we go. And we, in Reform, are wholly opposed to it in every single way.
Nigel Farage there, the Reform UK leader. Well, William Clouston is leader of the Social Democratic Party and joins me now. William, what do you think about this? Do you agree with Nigel Farage that this is sinister and that it won't help? What's your view?
Well, we're against it. We issued a press release this afternoon in the SDP opposing this. I think it has so many problems. I mean, the first issue I have with it is that it's mandatory. I mean, the government's saying unless you have a digital ID, you can't work. So they're making it mandatory, and yet they have no mandate for it. Could you remember this proposal being in the Labour manifesto from last year?
It certainly wasn't.
I can't. No. So that's the first issue. The second thing is that they're selling this on a false premise. I mean, it's unnecessary. They're pretending that we need this because we want to stop people working illegally. Well, working illegally is illegal already. You're not allowed to work unless you have a national insurance number, and you're not allowed to work here if you're an illegal immigrant, and you're not entitled to be here anyway. So I think it's a distraction. What they're doing, they're concealing the real reason why they want to do this, I think.
What do you think the real reason is?
I think they've been lobbied by big tech interests, and I think there's the hand of the Tony Blair Institute in this, which receives massive funding from these people. And I think they want to unify the data so they can use it and exploit it, basically, for commercial gain. And I think the problem with this is that there is a difference between corporate interests, and I can understand big tech wanting to make lots of money out of tech, and actually we live in a world where the solution to all the problems is more tech and buy more stuff. I can see they want to do that, but there's a big difference between that, Peter, and the national interest, and there's a big difference between that and citizens' interests. So I find the whole thing very, very concerning. And actually, if anyone wants to investigate this, I would point them to a recent article in the New Statesman about the Tony Blair Institute, who are just hammering this, and I think the government is in their pockets.
Isn't there merit in this scheme to some degree, William, if it is helping people access services, if it is putting information together? For example, we heard from a Labour MP earlier on who said cancer patients wouldn't have to tell every bit of government about their condition, for example, because it would actually unify the information. Now, I am quite worried about that as a concept, but could there be benefits to this?
Well, I'm not a Luddite. I'm on the NHS app myself, and it's very useful. So I'm not against tech being used in this way. But again, I think they're using it under a false premise. They're selling it today, and it's still early stages. We have to wait and see. But they're selling it today as a means of stopping illegal employment. And now people are saying, well, it's got something to do with the health service. The health service issue is a different thing anyway, because, again, American big tech is very, very keen on getting its hands on this massive pool of data. And actually, it has been estimated that the annual value of this, if they could get the whole thing in one box, is several billion. People have estimated 10 billion a year. So again, commercial interests would be interested in that. I mean, from a citizen's point of view, I want the NHS to be as efficient as possible, and use of technology is very important to that. But what they're proposing, it seems, is to put everything in a single place. And again, from a cyber security point of view, Peter, there can't be a day that goes by that someone hasn't been hacked. There's this awful story, this nursery. You've got to call.
Well, we've all received those emails, William, haven't we, where they say you now need to change your password for this account, or we're sorry your data has been compromised. I mean, I've received a number of those emails. I never quite know what to do with them. I never quite know, well, is this a big thing? Is this a small thing? Do I need to worry? Do I not need to worry? What do I need to do? And they often say change your password or whatever. Usually I end up just not doing business with that business any longer, it must be said. But the potential for hacking huge amounts of information, and information that's been kind of put together, the metadata, that's what worries me.
That's exactly what worries me, Peter, because for the same reason, again, Jaguar Land Rover, the Co-op, lots of retailers, lots of banks constantly getting hacked, and their security. And, the government itself can't be trusted. It's proved that it can't be trusted to keep data securely. So, I mean, I often when these things occur, I ask what I call the Sergeant Wilson question. Is putting all this information in one place, is that terribly wise?
Yeah.
I don't think.
Yeah. I just wonder, just before you go, if I could ask you about the Morgan McSweeney investigation. This is the Electoral Commission, which has said they're not going to reopen their investigation into the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, over the Labour Together donation scandal. It said it found no evidence of any other potential offences. What do you make of this?
Well, I don't think there's a great deal to make of it. I mean, they were investigated a few years ago. It's 2021, isn't it? There were a number of breaches, and I can see the Tories being disappointed. But if Elcom decide there's nothing to see, there's nothing to see.
OK. William, thank you. That's William Clouston there. He's leader of the Social Democratic Party. I appreciate you joining us this evening. Let's speak to Angela in Cumbria, who's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Angela, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Thank you very much. Well, I was just saying to your young lady there that
everybody knows where we are. They can track us now by our phones. Most people have got a phone, so they know where you are, right? So when we get we won't get an ID card, but when we do, if we do, they're going to have all that already, plus all our historical information, right? Because they can go back on Cloud Doodly-Doo for years, right? They know everything we do. The migrants who come in, whether legal or illegal, if they get an ID card, all we're going to know is about them from the day they got the ID card. We won't have any historical information.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. It's not. Right. It's not very fair, is it? It's not.
No.
And there's a widespread worries about abuse here.
Well, the thing is that what's going to happen to me and you and all of us, what's going to happen is that everything will be tracked. They'll know if I'm going out of the house, coming into the house, which they know already. They're going to know about my bank accounts, what I spend, what I buy, what I eat. No, thank you.
Yeah.
I need a little privacy, please.
Well, certainly. I totally agree with everything you're saying. I think that those are well-founded fears. Angela, thank you. Thanks to Laura in Perthshire as well. He says, good afternoon, Peter. We're now at the point where we must personally do all we can to stop these issues. One simple thing we can do today is to boycott every company or business suspected of employing people illegally, because money always talks. Let's dry up their funds and see who sits up and takes notice. Another Laura says, I'm livid regarding digital ID. Why is it the law-abiding UK citizens have to conform? Get your house in order, government, and digital ID those who are unlawful or illegal. Jeremy in Newbury says, with 70,000 mobile phones stolen here in the UK each year, easy to unlock, how will my data be safe? It's a very good point. Chris says, they can throw me in jail. I will never accept this digital identification. It's part of this government's control. This country should not become a dictatorship. Thank you to Dawn in Chelmsford, who says, our once wonderful country is falling apart under this dreadful government. Then Starmer makes a very threatening statement about digital ID. Rick in West Yorkshire, what if we don't have or don't want a smartphone? How else will they make sure we always have our ID number on us, or our person at all times? Well, apparently you can print it out, but I don't think that's a system that's going to work particularly well. Laura in Nottingham says, I'd have a lot more respect if they were just honest about the reasons behind digital ID. Do they really think that if someone is employing someone without a national insurance number, they're going to insist on seeing digital ID? Also, there's no such thing as free when it comes to things done by the government. Mike says, on digital ID, having access to NHS records, bank details, government digital ID, and now they say that will include your educational qualifications, employment details, the details of every job you apply for, health information, income and tax, all under one roof, all accessible on an insecure mobile phone. The government admits all of this information they hold will evolve over time. The risks of government overreach are immense, not to mention that if you lose your phone, all of that information in one place, you can lose an awful lot. Mike, you're right. Christina says digital ID will be open to scammers and hackers. Another avenue, another gold mine. Gary in Barnes says, if I get a digital ID, do I get an NHS dentist to go with it? Mick says, Starmer is like a boy who cried wolf. He lied on a daily basis and now nobody trusts him. Clayton and Dartford, Lisa Nandy and her we think means she hasn't got a clue, just like the rest of the collection of Muppets running the country, says Clayton. Lots more to discuss. We'll talk about the nuts and bolts of this next. Loads of people getting in touch and want to talk about it. You can too. If you want to get in touch, you want to get your voice on the air between now and 7 o'clock, the number is 0344 499 1000. We're going to talk to a digital security expert next. If you have questions for that person, by all means send them through at 7222 with the word talk in your text, and I will read them out if you like. Curtis Minder will be with us. He's a cyber attack specialist and chief executive of Group Sense. I've interviewed him before. He's really, really excellent. Also on the digital ID petition, at the moment, the last time we checked a few minutes ago, 1,233,165 signatures currently, and going up fast. Stay with us.
I have confidence in the Conservatives, and I have confidence in the energy and combativeness of Kenny.
But the public don't seem to be. The public don't seem to agree with you.
Let's see.
Now, the Royal soap opera meets the Epstein files.
Prince Andrew's ties to Epstein already represent one of the monarchy's greatest reputational meltdowns.
This 10-page birthday letter you wrote to Jeffrey Epstein makes a pretty cringeworthy reading. I find them very embarrassing to see. First convicted, first indicted, you continued a business and personal friendship. It was not a business. Not a business relationship.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Loads of tweets coming in. I've just been looking at my phone there during the break. Andy says, luckily for now, they can only track where a phone is, not the owner. What if the owner has left it at home or on a train? This will lead to the next stage, chip implants. Oh, please no. Sandy says, I agree with your caller, Steve. A smack is often enough to deter bad behaviour in a child. Can you not see the correlation between corporal punishment in schools stopping and the breakdown of discipline in children? You don't even have to commit the act of a smack, just the threat of it works wonders. Sandy, yeah, but I've seen really good schools where there is no corporal punishment for years and years with well-behaved children. You know, I just don't think you need to smack children. I think there are better ways to discipline children. I think you can do it far more effectively in other ways. David says, sorry Peter, but true democracy is trial by jury, not adult suffrage, i.e. voting in elections. This is just the majority deciding, collectivism, not individualism. And another person says, Starmer's middle name is really Rodney. Yes, it is. What a plonker, says Andy there. I want to talk more about the nuts and bolts of this digital ID idea, and also in the nursery hackers. This is a horrendous story, a nursery where hackers have threatened to publish children's profiles online. They've actually already published some of them, and they're threatening to publish more. Well, Curtis Minder is a cyber attack specialist, a ransomware expert, author of a book called Cyber Recon, My Life in Cyber Espionage and Ransomware Negotiations. Curtis, it's great to talk to you again. I just wonder what your advice would be, first of all, to this nursery and the fact that these bits of information have been put online and these ransomware scumbags are threatening to do even more.
Yeah, it's horrible. I hate to hear stories like this. I think the first thing they need to do is get professional incident response help from a professional incident responder firm to help them make sure that the threat actors can no longer gain access to the systems.
Yeah, and within that, the hackers are holding pictures, private data, thousands of nursery children, their families. This is criminals calling themselves Radiant. They hacked a nursery chain called Kiddo, posting profiles of 10 children online. They have shared a data leakage roadmap saying the next steps for us will be to release 30 more profiles of each child and 100 employees' private data. If this nursery came to you, what advice would you give them? What would you do? Would you negotiate? Would you pay? What would you do?
Well, I never sort of dictate to the client what they should do as far as whether they should pay or not. I usually leave that up to them. A lot of times that's very much a values-based decision that I can't make for them. But I do think there is value in engaging with the threat actors. I mean, last I checked, on the shame site where they're leaking this data, the threat actors are claiming that they're not cooperating. This could at least buy time until we figure out how bad the incident is and whether the threat actors still have access to the systems.
When you're dealing with people like this, people who have no scruples, people who will put details of children online, how do you deal with them? What sort of psychology, what kind of strategies do you use?
Well, as difficult as it may sound, I try not to be punitive. I try not to be, sort of angry or punitive toward the threat actors. We try to be slightly deferent and respectful, understanding that, they may have a different perspective on the world than we do, even though we don't agree with it.
Yeah, it's interesting because, of course, there are people who just want to extract money and so on. But how do you appeal to them? How do you say, let's be reasonable about this when they're being so unreasonable?
Well, like you said, most of these are very much financially driven. Depending on whether they've decided, to actually pay something, we would engage in a back and forth dialogue about what that data was worth to them and what they could afford. Not traditional positional bargaining, but like a values-based discussion on the data. Unfortunately, it's highly subjective. So what they think it's worth and what the nursery or the parents think it's worth may all be different values, and so it's a fairly complicated equation.
Have you had to sort of explain to sometimes these criminals actually some of their demands being ludicrously wrong when they look at things like, for example, turnover rather than profit?
Yeah, very often I have to give almost like an impromptu business class to these folks. They see big numbers on a financial sheet. They don't actually understand margin, profit, and loss, and so on. Yeah.
We're in a situation in this country, Curtis, where our government is saying that we should have digital IDs. Do you think that's a good idea, or would you be worried about the safety of that data?
I don't know the complete background as to why they're saying that. I would say that, at least in the U.S., I would be concerned about that, in that the U.S. government has not typically been a great steward of our data. So, trusting them to keep all of that information secure, I would be concerned about that.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the government is saying that this could actually simplify things, that access to services could be easier, that the right to work in a country could be codified through this digital ID. I mean, the worry I would have, just as a sort of a bystander, would be that actually if you're going to subvert the system, you're going to do it anyway. And I wonder, through your professional experience, when you try to make things tighter and security tighter in whatever regard, you as the sort of government or whatever innovate, but then the criminals innovate as well, don't they? And actually they've got much more of an impetus, a motivation to increase it, especially if there's money to be made.
Yeah, and if you think about it, I mean, in some ways we're already functioning with some sort of digital identity, whether that's through credit cards or similar. But I think the main concern would be putting all of that data in one place. It's almost an eggs in a basket thing. And then, like you said, the threat actors have a lot of time on their hands and a lot of resources.
Yeah, it's absolutely correct. I mean, have you seen this work in other countries as well, especially when you're dealing with the kind of threats that people have and the hacking that occasionally happen here?
So we have worked with other countries that have national digital ID programs. I've seen that, I wouldn't use the word work, but we've seen that implemented and it functions, but it also did introduce a significant amount of risk. And that's part of the reason why we were engaged, right? So there were people taking advantage of those programs, creating fraudulent IDs, fake personas, things like that, using other people's IDs, which actually ties very closely to the case that you brought to the call. And that is, young people who are just, they haven't entered the workforce yet, at least in the US, a lot of times those identities are used to create identities that have credit scores and things like that to make additional purchases on behalf of someone who is not old enough to do so.
Yeah, that's interesting. So they haven't actually entered the workforce yet, but they're kind of registered with this digital ID. That's interesting. And certainly there are those flaws in the system. I mean, you've identified a big one even before this starts, to say nothing of the fact that to a lot of our viewers and listeners on this station, and to me as well, actually, the worry is about the kind of metadata, the fact that it's all together, and that certain things can be drawn from that. I don't want to be conspiratorial and say, my doctor's going to start telling me to stop eating less red meat because they're monitoring exactly what I'm eating. But that's possible, isn't it? It's possible to put all that data together.
It's not just possible, it's plausible. I mean, again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist either, but it's a free market economy, and there are business benefits to tying those data to each other for those kinds of decisions.
Yeah. Fascinating to talk to you as always, Curtis. Listen, thank you, Curtis Minder there, who is a cyber attack specialist, ransomware expert, author of a book called Cyber Recon, My Life in Cyber Espionage and Ransomware Negotiation. Thanks to Jeff in Aberdeenshire, who says, I do not want the government in my bank account or my shopping cart, and they will be. The lame reasoning for bringing it in speaks volumes about their intent. They're sneaking something in. Sam says, all the big tech companies were at the state banquet when Trump came over and they announced this tech deal. Could digital ID be part of that deal? That way our big tech companies get even more access to our data. Robert says, on digital ID, you need this to work, but what about the you need this to work, but what about the disabled that can't work, but you're British, what then? What does this mean? That we have no other chance of work, that we don't matter and have no rights, says Robert. Steve says, I hear people saying about being stopped by police to be asked for ID. You've got to actually come across a police officer on foot first. I haven't seen a police officer on foot for years. Paula says, if they want digital ID, stop illegal migrants working, just deport all the illegal migrants, problem solved. I did see 2 police officers on foot the other day, actually, about 10 days ago. I saw them on foot in my neighbourhood, and I thought, my goodness, I haven't seen that in a very long time. I haven't seen just 2 bobbies on the beat patrolling the area. And then they walked down the street, and then they turned left into Sainsbury's, where they bought their lunch. Stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you so much to everybody who's been in touch, including Mike in Cornwall, who says, how will this work, ID from Ireland? What about Northern Ireland, where daily people travel across the soft border? Will the Republic of Ireland citizens be exempt? Thank you, great show. Mike, that is a very good point. I'm writing it down, and I'm going to ask Steve Reid on Sunday. He is the Housing Secretary. He's out for the government on Sunday. Labour conference coming up, so I'm adding that to my list of questions. Many people have sent in some really, really good ideas. Digital ID, the battle for Britain's soul. That is something that The Sun is covering in great depth tomorrow. John Lucas is the night news editor of the paper. Hi, John.
Good evening.
This is, I don't know about your readers, but our viewers and listeners, this is really, really taken off. They're very, very annoyed with this. They certainly don't want it. How will the paper be covering it?
Yeah, well, it's the big issue of the day, isn't it? It's the policy that nobody's really asking for. And you know,
and wasn't in their manifesto.
It wasn't in the manifesto. Starmer's government is, you know, it's mired in all sorts of issues at the moment, and yeah, this is the thing that they've chosen to tackle. So we'll devote our leader column tomorrow to this issue. So this is the voice of the paper.
Yeah,
so
the Sun says. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, you've been talking about it all day. We sort of knew that it was going to happen yesterday, but Starmer's been setting out his stall. But obviously, it comes on the day we've also had this big YouGov poll. Which says that if we were to have a general election tomorrow, Nigel Farage and Reform would, you know, not quite take the whole country, but it would be a hung parliament. They'd do very, very well. And you know, is this really how Labour wants to put this sort of policy forward? Also, remember when Labour tried to do this a long, long time ago, it was you know, there's a lot of opposition to it. I mean, look, you can put a reasonable hat on and say we've moved on in that 20 years. We give a hell of a lot of our data information to companies. A lot of them we don't even know really who they are. We've got apps on our phones. We're happy to chuck it all over. But look, this is what we're saying. What you've got to think about is the mismanagement that we see in the British state. We know all about the immigration shambles, which again, this is a massive sort of drain, taking attention away from that topic. And the government's got a very long history of losing personal data and falling prey to cyber attacks. I mean, we've seen you guys were talking about a slightly different issue, but a cyber attack on nurseries.
Yeah.
This sort of thing can happen.
The Afghanistan leak as well. The MOD's meant to be incredibly secure. I should say actually that the petition is past 1.25 million now, 1,258,000 signatures currently, going up fast, and that's almost 300,000 up since we started the show at 4 o'clock. There's a lot in this, isn't there, John? And also it seems to be the return of Blairism, and he's rearing his head in another one of your stories tomorrow about Gaza.
Yeah, well, look, it's Blair's back with ID cards, not quite, but also he's again looking to bring peace to the Middle East. That was a big. I'm sure lots of your listeners and viewers are going to remember. Blair was very proactive on the world stage. You could argue that he, a lot of the interventions that he undertook were, looking back in history
he brought war
now,
to the Middle East and Libya, for example.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously Iraq was a debacle, but he did spend a lot of time on the Middle East peace process, Israel-Palestine. It was always a big thing in his career. And yeah, he could essentially, if Donald Trump's been talking this afternoon about saying, well, we might have a deal now between Hamas, and not quite sure exactly if that's there at the moment, but Blair is ready to step in as a sort of a leader of the Palestinian interim authority. So he would oversee a transition from Hamas. So obviously got to remember Hamas is actually a terrorist organisation. It's also the government of Gaza. That Blair would step in there. It's a very interesting prospect if he does do it. I'm not sure how well received it will be there, but yeah, big move from him. And on the day, obviously, Benjamin Netanyahu's been speaking at the UN, giving quite a sort of punchy defence of what Israel's doing. He said, well, look, the militias in Yemen have been destroyed. We've destroyed Iran's nuclear capabilities. We've done all sorts of stuff. We're fighting on the front line of this sort of ideological war. But lots of countries walked out. So lots of Arab, Muslim, African nations, Arab, European states walked out on this, and but he was quite defiant at this speech.
And interesting as well in terms of how the live broadcast delivered directly to the people of Gaza after the IDF, Israeli Defence Force, took control of their cell phones in an unprecedented move. That was something very different.
Yeah, so I mean that's an attempt to get through straight to the people of Gaza and say, look, we don't want to be. Obviously, they face a lot of accusations of how they've conducted this war, and people talk about genocide. Netanyahu today was saying, well, look, we make a huge amount of effort to warn civilians to get out of the way. I mean, people can also make the point that, well, that's not enough because you're still clearing civilian areas. Don't want to get too bogged down in that, but it is an attempt to get through to the people and say, look, we really need change. Hamas cannot be the government of Gaza. So who knows? Trump, he made this comment as he was attending the Ryder Cup. He says, it looks like we've got a deal. We're going to get the hostages back. I think it's going to be peace.
Yeah.
Who knows?
What does that actually mean?
What does it mean? We don't know, but
it says that stuff a lot.
Obviously, it's early in the day over there, so by the end of the night, we might have
some clarity. Tell us what's happening in Albania. This is a fascinating story about a gangland feud. Just tell us about that.
Yeah, well, I like this because I've done loads of stories.
You've written books on it.
I have, yeah. I wasn't going to say that, but
well, all right.
On Albanian organised crime, it's a huge deal. But this is and I don't often get to talk about the work that Features do. So Features have done a really great job on. This is about a couple of Albanian gangster brothers who are living in just a normal, unassuming terraced house in Tottenham, and they have built up a huge, tens of millions of pounds drug empire where they're shipping cocaine straight from South America into England, and there was an incident where about 50 kilos of cocaine went missing in London, and it's led to this huge Europe-wide gang war, about 14 dead. And features, so it's Grace McCaskill on features. She's been over to Albania and she's gone and she's looked at this huge, sprawling, sort of like Tony Montana style estate that these guys have managed to build out in the hills there. She's gone to take a look at all this, and it's a really big deep dive into this case, which is fascinating if you like that sort of thing.
Where's the cocaine gone, do we know?
Well, it's probably by now would have disappeared up
noses.
Up noses,
yes.
for sure. Yeah, I don't know who would.
But
have
it was
got
taken by some sort of rivals to these gangs.
It's one of these brothers, it's believed, and they're wanted over a whole load of murders. They're in Dubai allegedly at the moment.
Okay.
It's fascinating tale, and features, yeah, have done a great job on it.
Great stuff, great stuff. And if you want more and all that, you can go on Amazon and look at John's books as well. He's, of course, hiding your light under a bushel there. But when you have a book out, John, you've just got to tell people. You just got to tell people. If only we knew another author who had a book out recently.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, tell us about filming for the new Harry Potter TV show. Tell me about the army of ticks and horseflies.
Yeah.
This hasn't gone very well, has it?
Well, widely anticipated, this Harry Potter reboot. And we've seen all the kids and all the stars. You've got Nick Frost is Hagrid and all the rest of them. I don't know all the Harry Potter characters, I'm going to be honest.
Do you miss it?
Well, I'm not a...
You're not a Harry Potter fan?
I'm not a Harry Potter fan. Well,
okay.
But anyway, millions of people are. And they've started filming today at Great Windsor Park. But because of the location, they have been hit with... the cast and crew have been warned about all these ticks and horseflies. They're being plagued with them down there.
Goodness.
It didn't get off to a great start, and the thing is, they're very security conscious on this set. They've been sending out messages to people saying that don't leak anything. They've got the you know, films often have or productions have a code word, so that it's called Dark Train. They had to switch that to Brown Cat. Management got very, very paranoid, and they get told everything by text message, but it deletes after one message. It says, just remember, we're not Dark Train anymore, we're Brown Cat. Please make sure you know, you remain incognito. Somehow, I don't know how,
it's come out.
It's all leaking out. The more you try and lock something down, the more it leaks out. So all this stuff about the ticks has leaked out, and Nick Frost is down there today. We've seen them, and it's fascinating because obviously great. It's the royal property.
Yes.
So they've transformed it. We had we mocked it up a bit in today's paper. So they've got the Hogwarts Express down there, and there's a big sort of 4-mile track through the forest. So it's going to be fascinating.
You know the villain's called in Harry Potter, don't you? Voldemort. Yeah. So there was a government minister called Liam Byrne. You've probably come across him, Liam Byrne, the MP, who was so hated in the Treasury that his nickname, and he sadly, no reflection on you, John, but he is also follically challenged, and his nickname was Voldemort.
That's good. Yeah. I've not had that one before.
It's creative. It's creative. That brings us all back, of course, these problems with data, of course, to the to digital ID. Loads to read about in The Sun tomorrow. Thank you to John. Hope you have a lovely weekend. John, that's John Lucas there. He's night news editor of The Sun. Between now and 7 o'clock, we'll have a quick chat with Kevin O'Sullivan. We'll take many more of your calls, thoughts, voice notes. Send them in, and your messages 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
rhetoric seems to say a lot of the things that are similar to what reforms say. Maybe he would have a chance of rescuing them, but that's not exactly a foregone conclusion. And as you pointed out, they're starting from such a low baseline, the Tories, right now, and they have to go around apologising for everything, because as much as Helen Whiteley can try and say, well, we inherited a dreadful situation from Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, I mean, people are sort of looking at their watches and going, sorry, how far back are we meant to go?
I know.
How much responsibility are you just casting to the wind?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to everybody who's got in touch on Twitter. Philip says, this is just the tip of the iceberg, Peter. Full totalitarian control is coming. Cashless society, social credit system, 15-minute cities, pay per mile. It's all coming. Mark my words, the COVID lockdowns were a test run of how much they can control. It was also, Philip, I think, a test of how much people will accept. Loads of people said, oh, lockdown, further, faster, yeah, lock it down. You know, there were a load of people who accepted that and thought that that was a good way to run things. Amy says, what happens if someone has a smartphone, but it's an older one, so isn't able to run the digital ID app? Will people have to buy up-to-date smartphones? Also, will there be a mass sackings of employees that don't want digital IDs? Well, we certainly saw quite a number of people who were carers who wouldn't get vaccines, who were laid off, thousands of them. And guess what? There was a real crisis, and indeed still is a real crisis, in vacancies for care workers. Angie, on a slightly lighter note, has been in touch and says, haddock supper. Never thought I'd be hearing about this. Pray tell us, Peter. Yes, I had haddock supper last night. It was very, very nice. Haddock and chips. And I had a cod and chips one earlier in the week, haddock and chips last night, and I can say that they were equally as delicious. I got them from the same place as well for control purposes. Now then, let me read a couple of messages and then we'll go to some calls. Bruce says, they say it's to stop illegal working. The illegal immigrants are not coming here to work anyway. Yet again, the public are having to pay for government screw-ups. Barry says, Italy, Germany, Spain, Belgium and Austria all have digital ID and all have ongoing immigration issues. Digital identification proves nothing, says Barry. Rollo says, no Labour person has said digital ID will stop ineligible people using the NHS. It is very telling. Angela says, remember when they brought in money laundering laws which made banks question cash withdrawals and deposits? That has creeped in. You now get interrogated from withdrawing your own money. The same will happen with digital ID, says Angela. Yes, Angela, I know exactly what you mean. There is a member of my family who put in money to the bank and they said, where did you get this £300 cert? Which he said, I won it on the horses. Because well, he didn't, but it was of absolutely no interest or indeed relevance to where he got the money from. It was totally legitimate and he was just simply putting it on his own bank account. Lee is in London and has some thoughts on digital ID. Lee, you're very welcome to the programme. 0344 499 1000. The number Lee is called. What would you like to say, Lee?
Yeah, evening, Peter.
Hiya.
Yeah, obviously about the digital ID that's been announced today.
Sure.
I can't really see what it's really for, because I don't think it is for illegal immigration or for illegal working, because we've already got a card for that. It's called your national insurance card.
Yeah.
That I got about 40 years ago when I was 16. And I thought, oh, this is great. I can leave school now and get a job.
Yeah,
So,
I know what you mean. And I haven't got a convincing answer to that. I asked Emily Darlington, the MP, on this a bit earlier on, and I'm not sure I got a convincing answer. I don't know what it does that doesn't exist already.
Because quite simply, I don't know, say I'm Border Force or whatever government thing it is, so I'm thinking, right, there might be a few dodgy ones at talk radio towers, I'm going to go in there. I mean, my first thing would say, I'd get you all into your reception bit or whatever, can you all give me your national insurance numbers? And when the one person or two people, I ain't got one, well, everyone's got one.
Yeah.
If you're legally here, then everyone's got one. Again, with using the NHS, I mean, when I was born and got registered, I've got a national.
Well, the thing is as well, actually, it's interesting with the NHS because there are loads of people who aren't entitled to the NHS, but the NHS treats them anyway because their whole mantra is do no harm, treat people, and they can, if they want to, they can check if you're eligible at NHS reception, at receptions in A&E or wherever it is, but they rarely, if ever, do because they don't want to turn people away, and that's what happens. And, you know, there are lots of nurses and doctors who get a load of abuse anyway. If they're going to turn people away because they say, well, you're not a citizen of this country or you're not entitled to this care, well, that's going to be even more problematic for them.
And also, just lastly, they're saying, like, obviously, Starmer's come out and say, oh, everyone's got to have this mandatory card. Will it be a criminal offence if I don't have one? Because as far as I can see, I don't need a rental agreement because I've got an house, so I don't need it for that. I've already got a job, so I don't need it to get a job. I've already got a doctor's. I've been there, I don't know, 28, 29 years now.
Yeah.
So I don't, and the only thing that I can see, because at the moment, I drive, like, I've got a driver's licence, so I can drive. At the moment, if I get stopped by the police, I ain't got to give them anything.
Yeah, no, listen, I know what you mean.
They don't ask for, licence and registration, please. It's like, they've got the ANPR, they know that it's taxed, they know that it's insured, they know that it's MOT'd, they might just ask me what's my name. But I do not at the moment have to show anything to prove who I am. Are we going to get into a society where, you've knocked your ID and you bundled into the back of the van and taken to a cell?
I certainly hope not, Lee, and that really genuinely worries me that we could be heading in that direction. Thank you for your thoughts, Lee, all very sensible. Mark in Runcorn says, why don't they just enforce the current laws regarding illegal workers? All you have to do is raid car washes, barbers and order some takeaways, the cash in hand places, not rocket science, and no digital ID required. Rob in London says, evening Peter, evening Rob, the digital ID is very insidious. How dare Starmer impose this on us? He's becoming more dictatorial every day. When is this horror story going to end? Such a huge policy affecting us all. We should go to a referendum so we can decide. It's outrageous and dangerous. Well, I'm going to be asking a member of the government. One of Keir Starmer's key lieutenants is the Housing Secretary, Steve Reid, very close to him politically. Steve Reid is going to be on my programme on Sunday between 10 and 1. I have a load of questions for him. If you've got questions for him, send them in the next 10 minutes and I'll make sure that I ask them. John in Maidstone says, how is Starmer able to do this with the digital ID? Surely Parliament has to have a vote on this, or is he allowed to drive roughshod over everything, says John. Well, the thing is, he can do what he wants as long as Labour MPs support him because he has so many hundreds of them. Mark in Basingstoke says, the genie is already out of the bottle in digital ID. You already have a digital ID. You have a tax number, a passport number, an NHS number, a bank account, driving licence, mobile phone, government gateway ID. You're already being tracked and monitored. This is nothing new. Mike says, can you imagine Tony Blair being the governor of Gaza, a man from a former colonial power that presided over the area, coming back to dictate to the Palestinians what they can and cannot do? I think he would have to do it from home because he would last about 5 minutes in an office in Gaza. Good evening, Peter, says Glenn in Colchester. Good evening, Glenn. This may sound a little simplistic, but I think this digital ID is all a ruse. They know it will never be implemented and will use the same arguments to rid us of voter ID. Well, it's very interesting on voter ID because they're saying, oh no, you don't need voter ID, but you need digital ID for other things. Another thing I'm going to ask Steve Reid about. Right, Ross is in Coventry and wants to talk about this. Ross, you're very welcome to the programme. What are your thoughts on digital ID?
No, good evening, Peter.
Hi there.
Well, I think we've just found out what Keir Starmer gave away for the data centre deal in America. Surely,
you don't think that's a coincidence that all these all this investment came in?
Wow, that's it. The amount of power and size of the server rooms they're going to need to run this, and it's a coincidence. The Americans are coming over with their billions and investing in data centres, which begs the question, who's going to be holding all our data?
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. Are you concerned about this, Ross? You sound concerned.
Wow, I am, yeah, very much. You know, I've got 2 teenage children and I just think it's a slippery slope. You know,
I think it's a slippery slope too. You know, there's so many different bits they can put together and so many decisions they can make for us. I do worry about the liberty aspect of it.
No, definitely. I mean, I personally think it's going to be linked to their climate agenda. You know, once you've brought enough petrol for the week, you know, that'll be your quantity. Once you've been on holiday once, that'll be all you're allowed. Once you've had 1 steak a week, that's all you'll be able to buy. I mean, you just can't trust anything they say.
Listen, thanks for your thoughts, Ross. I appreciate that. That's Ross in Coventry there. Jane says, the Prime Minister says this digital ID will be done by the end of this Parliament. As citizens, we must end this Parliament before it is implemented and somehow force a general election. Elaine says, she's in Portsmouth. Hi, Elaine. All this talk of digital ID and recognising Palestine as a state, it seems to me that Starmer is the monkey and Tony Blair is the organ grinder. Just a thought. Well, listen, I think the unseen hand of Tony Blair is in lots of different areas in regard to this. Chris is in Glasgow and has some thoughts on digital IDs. This is the #1 issue you wanted to talk about yesterday and today. We're going to keep talking about it over the weekend if you want. My show is between 10 and 12:30 tomorrow morning, and indeed on Sunday between 10 and 1. Chris, what are your thoughts?
I was just listening to your previous callers saying that we've already got from...
Chris, it's not a great line there. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you just fine. Are you hearing me okay?
It's not a great line. Let's see if we can get Chris back on a different line. We'll continue talking about this, of course. As I say, Kevin O'Sullivan will be on the station after 7 o'clock. He'll be in this studio between 7 and 9, and then between 9 and 10 he's got his What Just Happened programme. We'll talk to Kevin in a few minutes' time, of course. I think we're trying to get Chris back on the line, or maybe another caller as well. It's really interesting, actually. I mean, so many different views about this, and actually what the government has tried to do is calm people down a little bit. Darren Jones is the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, and he's put out a little video on the Number 10 social media on all of this and said to not worry about it, everything's going to be fine. We played it a little bit earlier on. Let's speak to Alistair, who's with us now. Alistair, you're very welcome to the programme as we try to get Chris back on a better line. Alistair, what would you like to say?
Hello there, Peter. Yeah, it's just a quick question, actually, because I know your time's limited. But we own our telephones, our mobile phones. They're our private property. Why should we allow Her Majesty's government to have access to our private property for their benefit?
I think that's a very, very good point, and I also wonder what they feel. You know, we're going to have to fill in documentation for this, we're going to have this on our phone, we're going to have to show it, for example. But then again, if it's the law, and there will be consequences if people don't follow the law.
Yes, but if our phones are our private property.
Yeah, well, would you resist it, Alistair? Would you say that you wouldn't be having one of them?
I would, definitely, most definitely.
Okay. Well, listen, thank you very, very much indeed. That's Alistair there in Bath, and we've just been told that Chris's signal is not very good, and we just can't get back in touch with him, unfortunately, properly. But he said the only way that this should happen is that the card should be biometric with Face ID, etc. He says it's the only way it can actually work, which is an interesting thought to add into the mix as well. On digital ID, we know that this petition has really taken off. It's on the Parliament website as well, and it's now at 1,283,320 signatures. It's going up fast. It's up about 300,000 since we started the show. So clearly an awful lot of people have views on this. Final caller of the day is Mark in Lincolnshire. Mark, what would you like to say about this?
Hi there, Peter.
Hi.
Yeah, the digital ID thing, absolute crock. I can't say the other part of that. Yeah, I mean, basically, it was kind of like came to me, the digital ID thing. When you think about illegal workers, which is how they're selling it, just like they did with the Online Safety Act, if you remember.
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
it's to protect the children, Mm-hmm. So all the sheep go along there, yeah, and all this stuff. Well, the thing is, with the illegal migrants working, quite a lot of them, I don't know whether it's all of them, but quite a lot of them are doing stuff like online work, like via things like Uber, Uber Eats and all this kind of stuff, which is all done online. So they're essentially renting an account, a legit account out.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's literally nothing stopping them doing exactly the same with the digital ID.
Yeah.
So what will happen is, of course, because what will happen is they'll do that work, that'll go to that original account owner's bank digitally. That's how it'll be paid. They'll then pay them in cash.
Yeah.
So then the government will say, oh, well, there is a loophole there. However, if we didn't have cash, we could close that loophole. We could just have digital banking.
Mark, I'm writing this down on my long list of questions to ask Steve Reid on Sunday, because there are so many different aspects to this. Will you resist getting a digital ID, Mark?
100%, Peter. I mean, I still have my old smartphone